Good morning and welcome all to the USVI Walkability Institute Summit. I'm LaVerne Ragster and it is a pleasure to be here with you today. I want to tell you that I have a very special, positive and full feeling when I'm able to extend welcome greetings to our governor who is trying to be in 25 places at the same time. He will be online with us shortly, but I'm just letting him know ahead of time that we're glad he's going to be here. We're also expecting the Senate President, Donna Fred Gregory, later on, and representing the university here today for David Hall is Provost Camille McKayle. So we have the beginning of our leadership group, and we're going to extend out. Now, walkability in our island communities, like other parts of the nation and the world, involves a wide range of organizations and institutions from the public and private sectors in the realization of a community that's going to be focused on the well-being of its citizens. That's the whole point of this. It's about the people, folks. Therefore, this summit, which is a part of a Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC-funded walkability initiative in the USVI, includes presenters and participants that represent the governor's cabinet, partners from the CDC, the National Association of Chronic Disease Directors, the U.S. Virgin Islands Legislature, Virgin Islands Housing Authority, University of the Virgin Islands, and AARP. We want to thank you for being here and look forward to hearing from the individuals of these groups as the summit continues. You'll get to meet them all. Some will be virtual, some will be here. The 2022 Walkability Institute Summit is the continuation of a project that began in 2016, addressing the availability of street-level supports for walking in the U.S. Virgin Islands. That was done as a study. And it continued in 2017 with the USVI Walkability Institute workshop, which was a collaborative effort between the Department of Health of the Virgin Islands and the Task Force for Global Health. So this is one of those projects where you need to know the continuity and remember that things don't always spring out of nowhere. Today, we're going to fast forward. And we're going to acknowledge that we experienced 2 Category 5 hurricanes in 2017, began hurricane recovery, and then rolled straight into a pandemic that began in 2020. And then at the same time, we started noting the challenges of living with the impacts of climate change-driven temperatures, droughts, and flooding. You can see some of the impact of the droughts outside, and if you're listening to the news today, you're hearing that there are airports that can't take planes today. The context for the Walkability Summit also includes the USVI reporting a smaller population. This is a historic low for us since the early 200s, supporting a smaller population that is aging. It's more multilingual and multi-ethnic, and it's increasingly challenged with managing non-communicable diseases like heart disease, cancer, and diabetes. Unfortunately, we show up in the wrong part of the charts for the United States, where we have higher levels or higher incidences of these diseases than other places. So we fit right into the health disparities area. The 2022 summit will give you, as a participant, the opportunity to highlight accomplishments since the 2017 workshop. Virgin Islands are notorious for getting that they did things well sometimes, as well as provide an opportunity for us to advance the many economic, environmental, social, and public health benefits of a more walkable society. I will say to you that when I was looking at the whole idea of walkable society in the territory, I was saying I really am an elder these days because I remember that that's all you did was walk. But we have changed a lot over the last 40, 50 years, and so we need to address some of these issues. So over the next 2 days, today and tomorrow, as you help to develop strategic priorities to improve walkability and increase active transportation. So we're talking about walking, bicycling, and transit use across the territory, both for residents and visitors, And as you identify key specific actions to realize the strategic priorities that you think should go forward, please look for the opportunities and need to collaborate. That's the big C in the room today. The second one is communication, but collaboration is critical. Identify how the various aspects of the context, what we've just been talking about, what is happening to the people and institutions and the structures in our territory, that's our context, of this community matters. And be clear about who are the most important partners and stakeholders to be involved in any efforts that we come up with to increase walkability in our communities. If you don't put the partners in the beginning in the planning, we tend to forget, and it becomes an afterthought, and then it becomes expensive, and sometimes it becomes a non-starter. I hope you will all embrace the prospect of providing the leadership and the support needed to help our home improve the quality of life and well-being of the people of the U.S. Virgin Islands by making our island communities more walkable. I really want to thank you for being here, both the folks that are in the Administration and Conference Center here on the Orville E. Kent campus, as well as those that are online. We're going to have some remarks from the university who's hosting this today in terms of space, and the person representing the university is Dr. McKayle, and she's going to come forward. Provost McKayle, thank you for being here.
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Ragster. Good morning, everyone. Governor, representatives from various agencies here. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you today to the University of the Virgin Islands and the Walkability Institute Summit. As Dr. Ragster said, I'm Camille McKayle. I'm Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs here at the University of Virgin Islands. Dr. Hall would have been here had he not been on vacation, and so I am also acting president. So I'm here to welcome you not only on behalf of the university, but on behalf of the president as well. I'm delighted that not only are we the host of this summit, but we are the home of the Walkability Institute. And for that, I'd like to thank Dr. McKayle for her leadership there, the Caribbean Exploratory Research Center, which is the perfect home, given that they do work in health disparities, and we know that walkability and being able to move is certainly one that our community needs to embrace. There's no better home than CERC for the Walkability Institute. Here at UVI, we've been active in encouraging healthy behaviors and lifestyles, which we know build community. Walkability, I think you spoke about 2 C's. I think the third C is community. So for example, this summer we've had Fitness Fridays on each of our campuses, but we know that we can do more. On the Albert A. Sheen campus, we have a very open campus, and it is not unusual to see many walking on our 130-acre campus daily. And what we're hoping within the next 3 to 6 months is we will have installation of 4 outdoor exercise stations donated by Rotary to enhance walkability and overall fitness on that campus. On this, our Orville E. Kent campus, we have a campus roads and sidewalk project that is underway. We've already awarded a contract, I guess NV5 was awarded the contract for engineering services, which includes surveying of existing areas, construction drawings, et cetera. So more to come. I also noted in one of my signature activities that the Walkability Institute provided support for a proposed project from our Caribbean Green Technology Center, who's also on the agenda today, for adding bicycle paths and e-bikes on our campuses. Fingers crossed that that will be funded. We are hopeful. And so by having the Walkability Institute here on campus, we expect to be kept on our toes, so to speak, with respect to enhancing walkability and hence community here on campus. Welcome to University of Virgin Islands. Thank you, Dr. McKayle, for your leadership, and have a delightful and productive institute and seminar.
Thank you very much, Dr. McKayle. At this time, I believe we're going to go to the governor and I will ask for a signal on whether or not that's going to go forward. Yes. Good morning, Governor Bryan.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We're not hearing you. You must be muted.
Can you hear me now?
There you go. Welcome.
Awesome.
Thank you. Which of our many islands are you on, sir?
I'm here in St. Thomas.
Oh, good, good, good. We're happy to have you, and it's an honor for us to be a part of your busy day today. Could you please share with us your remarks regarding walkability in the U.S. Virgin Islands?
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Dr. Michael. Dr. Ragster. Good morning, Dr. McKayle. I see my commissioners there on the platform as well. Good morning, everyone who is watching this there. I wish I could have joined you this morning, but as usual, my schedule is nuts. But what I'm really excited about is what you guys are going to participate in today. You know, we're doing some incredible things with healthcare in terms of rebuilding the three main hospitals on each island and what we're doing with the cancer center. We got two skilled nursing facilities that we're underway, and of course, the new Charles Harwood building over in St. Croix. But as good as all of that stuff is, the real goal of healthcare is to keep you out of all those places. And that's where the exercising and the walkability comes in. As your governor, I tried to make the best example by constantly seeking outdoor spaces and having people witness me, whether walking, cycling, golfing, fishing, or scuba diving, to just make sure that everyone understands that we have such a beautiful place where you can go outdoors every single day of the year and enjoy 84-degree weather, that we as a people need to start to take advantage of this. And so that's why we signed on to Act 8548, along with our partners at the ARP, to make complete streets. Because while, you know, it's great having a police escort when I'm out there cycling, I'm well aware that other cyclists don't have the same opportunity and how dangerous streets can be while you're exercising. People in the Virgin Islands are waking up and putting on their running shoes and getting out there and walking. And we want to make sure that they do that safely. So we have designated spaces where people can walk, they're exercising facilities along the way. But more so than that, we're launched under our Healthier Horizons initiative, Our Best Life. And this program is a program to get not only our seniors, but people of every age out there exercising in our community. Tomorrow is one of our kickoff events, and it's so the summit is timely. And Our Best Life is sponsoring a walk on all three islands. Hope that you would come out and join us. I'm going to be joining on St. Thomas. That walk is going to be from Griffith Park to Yacht Haven. That's going to be really good. We're going to be giving out T-shirts and everything, encouraging people to participate. And even our health department, our insurance department at our Department of Personnel is kicking up their efforts to make sure that people drink their water daily. You got to get your gallons in. Make sure that we continue to exercise and make ourselves healthy. So I wish you much success there. I am extremely glad to see Commissioner Gabriel there participating, Dr. Sims from Health, which shows the collaboration that is needed for this to work. So as we go along in our Best Life program, we'll be having more activities that are sponsored by the government with our community partners, all free to you, encouraging you to continue to be active and to participate in a way that will keep you out of great facilities that we are building. Don't forget, get your annual checkup, especially our males out there. You know, we don't like the doctor, to make sure that even with the walking, that you're controlling your high blood pressure or any other ailments that you have. And all that, I watch as people get up, all that aching and all that pain. A little bit of mobility and a lot of stretching will make a lot of those go away. That's right. I'm taking the medicine myself too and trying to stay as healthy as possible. Thank you for participating and have a fantastic summit.
Thank you very much, Governor Bryan. That this is definitely a different time. This is definitely the 21st century. Any of you remember any governors in the past, as many of the very good ones that we've had, talking about walkability. It's not a topic that has come up for us in our community in the past in this way, but I think it's certainly timely. So with that, we will move forward with our program. And the next part of this is something that's dear to my heart in that, in a number of ways. One, in that it speaks to the fact that any project that has multiple sectors and dimensions to it requires good leadership. Leadership does not mean one person only. It means that there is some consensus on how you move forward and what you're going to do. That could include lots of people from lots of different areas. And I hope that every person at this summit and those listening here and, also online will start to think about these things in a different way. For instance, the governor spoke about his bicycling. So somebody would think, well, maybe it's just about getting bicycles for people or getting them out, or making sure that you have a line on the road. But it also means that the person that's over public works needs to make sure that the roads are slanted the correct way to deal with both runoff as well as people moving on them. You have to have the right amount of space for the cars to go on it. Can you now deal with the heat that's there, and so forth and so on. Those kinds of things, one person alone is not going to be responsible for or think about it. We need to have all the different pieces, and it goes right back to that health issue. So that's where we're going to start right now. The next section on our program speaks to leadership and the health imperative. So we're going to work at this from a number of different perspectives this morning. The first set of panelists are already in place, and I'm going to ask each of them to, I'll tell you who they are now, and then I'll ask them to give one statement about why they think this is a good place for them to be today, and that's a surprise. You like that, right? And then they're going to go ahead and speak to how their particular area feeds into making sure that we deal with this whole business of improving the health of our citizens through addressing walkability. So, on my immediate right is my colleague and friend and my boss. When I'm a research associate with CERC as well, so this is my boss. And this is Dr. Noreen McKayle, one of the gems of this territory that we need to take better care of. Also, someone who's been in this business from the health, education, all leadership side for many, many years. Sitting next to her is Christina Dahlstrom, who flew in. I hope she had fun landing on a tiny island. Coming from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, welcome. Sitting next to her, coming over from the big island, right? No, you're on this side. All right, Dr. Sims. Dr. Sims, Nicole Sims is the Assistant Commissioner for Health, representing Commissioner Encarnacion. And sitting next to her is someone who I keep mixing up with somebody else, but who is a very special person, our Commissioner of Public Works, Mr. Derek Gabriel. So, Dr. McKayle, you're on first, and they're going to stay where they are. And what I've asked them, besides saying why this is an important, what is it that makes it good for them to be here, I also want them to speak to their particular area with respect to dealing with this health imperative. Dr. McKayle?
Thank you so much, Dr. Ragster, and good morning to everyone, both here at the ACC and those who are joining us virtually. It is a distinct pleasure for me to be here this morning, and based on what the moderator said, I probably have only 3 minutes to speak. So you know my name already. You know
7.
that I'm affiliated with the Caribbean Exploratory Research Center. And one of the things I really wanted to share this morning, just to contextualize, as Provost McKayle said, CERC is now the home for the USVI Walkability Institute. When the opportunity came up for us to serve as the home for the Institute, we discussed it and thought that it is indeed, as Provost McKayle said, such a good fit. CERC has been for close to 15 years now, really focused on health disparities research in the territory. If you think about the concept of walkability and what that represents, I was struck by the governor speaking about and acknowledging something as simple as biking and having that safety because he has his security. But for those of us who walk, for those of us who bike, we don't always have that. And so there are some inequities and there are some disparities just within the framework of having a walkable community. So that to me makes it a really great fit with CIRC and what we do. So I want to share with you our mission, again, to say why it is important that we are part of the conversation and part of the engagement with walkability in the territory. So our mission is that CIRC will provide strategic, purposeful, responsible, and responsive translational research focused on the social determinants of health and will support capacity building for research among faculty, students, and community members. It is absolutely essential when we talk about walkability because there is a link clear, as the research shows, between walkability and health outcomes. We see that just something very fundamental that we may not think about every day when we get up. Accessibility to quality care. How does an individual without transportation, who has unreliable transportation, but doesn't have access to a public transportation system, get to an appointment? And sometimes because of our reality in the territory with healthcare, you might have to wait another 3 months before you can reschedule that appointment. What are the implications for health outcomes? We know that with physical activity, there are links in terms of chronic illnesses. The more we engage in physical activity, the greater the likelihood that we reduce our risk for various chronic diseases. Heart disease, stroke, cancer, diabetes. All of those are implicated. But I want to share that, in fact, physical activity also has health benefits when we think about behavioral health, mental health. Dr. Ragster, in her opening remarks, talked about the situation in the territory with the 2 Category 5 hurricanes within 2 weeks of each other, followed very shortly after that by the pandemic. And think about what is happening in a community that is ravaged by 2 Category 5 hurricanes. Then we have a pandemic. We have stay-at-home orders. Those are all issues that point directly to why having walkable communities is that important. But one of the main points I want to make today within the framework of CIRC and why we are here is in doing my research and preparation for this summit, it became clear that there are gaps in the literature, there are gaps in research. And not surprising to many of us, a lot of the reports that I looked at, a lot of the articles that I looked at, focus on the states. Didn't really see much for the territory in the data, in the reports. And so this, to me, is an amazing opportunity for CIRC to be a part of that in terms of where are we with documenting and talking about what are the impacts of our focus now on walkability in the territory? What are the impacts of now implementing the Complete Streets policy, the act that was passed, I believe signed into law by the governor on April 11th of this year? So we have opportunities for contributing to the research in the area of walkability. We know there are economic benefits to walkability. We know there are health benefits. We know when we talk about our students, activity becomes important in terms of being in a place for learning. And so for all of these reasons, CIRC is really excited to be a part of what's going to be happening moving forward. I think there's a clear interrelatedness of all of the issues surrounding walkability. I think it's for me gratifying that we have our Department of Public Works, Department of Health, other entities, the AARP of the Virgin Islands, who, as Dr. Ragster mentioned in her opening remarks, has been pivotal in this whole process beginning. The Department of Health that has been there and steady from the beginning. And we are poised to collaborate across entities, government, non-government. We understand the importance of communication. We understand the importance of community. And so we look forward to doing more and being a part of how the territory moves forward with walkability. I look forward also to the conversation following the presentations by my other panel members. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Michael. Instead of, in your agenda, the next person to speak is the Commissioner of Health, and I'm gonna go that way if that's okay. So, Dr. Sims, thank you for being here. As are you acting commissioner or? No, you're just representing the commissioner. Wait, that was last week. Okay, glad to have you. Please go forward.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ragster. Good morning, everyone. It is indeed my pleasure to be here this morning representing Commissioner Encarnacion and the Department of Health. As mentioned, I'm Dr. Nicole Cragwell-Sims, Assistant Commissioner. And to answer your first question, I'm here because I don't think anything is unintentional. There's a reason that I was supposed to be here today. From a health perspective, I think we can all just understand a pipeline between activity, walking, cycling, running, anything physical, and actual physical health. But the art of walking and running and cycling and all of those things are dead. I see young people who would want to ride from this building to the bus stop down the hill. It's like, it's something that's just not happening anymore. We want to jump in cars, we want rides here, we want rides there. So the art of that alone has really surpassed us. And I think it's important for us to get back to that. When I was in high school, I grew up as an athlete, and being an athlete, everything was walking. Like my parents literally were like, can I have a ride there? No. What you can do is walk there, but there were so many benefits to that for people, period. And those people, my generation, have turned into people that no longer walk. We no longer strap up our sneakers and walk anywhere. And I think from a health perspective, that is an issue. Of course, the Department of Health, we speak to everything from chronic disease to communicable disease to behavioral and mental health. And a lot of those areas that we see can be prevented if persons strapped up and walked, ran, cycled. From a behavioral health and mental health perspective, and Dr. Michael did mention that, as a psychologist myself, I see a lot of persons who I can see the cloud. And when prescribed something as simple as, okay, take a walk. And we never know, even in conversation, if you looked at your workplace and you see where levels are rising in people, like going from like a 2 to a 4 to a 5 to a 6, you see it bubbling. What's one of the first things you say to them? Take a walk. Go take a walk. And you're not really conscious of how just prescribing that alone has helped that person, because by the time they come back, they're back to a 2 and a 3. You can have that conversation. Everyone is calm. They're levels. And so from that perspective, because your mind controls pretty much everything that you're going to do. And so once you put into your mind that I need this, 30 minutes a day, really, when we prescribe is what we prescribe. 30 minutes of some activity. Couch potatoes are real. Okay, they're not a myth. It's nothing on TV. It's for real. And then when we see persons who come in, a lot of times when we recommend anything physical to those individuals, you can see those clouds lifting. And so for the Department of Health, I think, and the team, Dr. Fredericks and everyone that was a part of that effort, seeing the fruits of that labor and seeing those areas that need to be corrected in terms of sidewalks and appropriate streets and signage, etc., I think would really benefit. Just a quick story. When I was in school, my art teacher ran every morning. And I really looked up to that because as an athlete, I was like, okay, I need to start running every morning. And one day I went to school and he wasn't there. He had been hit by a car running. And for a long time, I stopped running because there's this thing that naturally will happen that, okay, this is just not it. And so we still see a lot of those places that are so dark and hidden that's really what happens to a lot of people, like the fear of just doing that. So the collaboration, to have us all here working together to better those areas, I think would be a step in the right direction. So I'm looking forward to anything that we can do from the Department of Health perspective to make this a reality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sims. Well, Commissioner Gabriel, I think your area is going to be in the hot seat for a while. We're really happy you're here today. And so I'm going to ask you to please, introduce how your area is looking at this and why you think this is a good idea for you to be here.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Of course, to my fellow panelists, Dr. Ragster. I am here today because it feels like I am a part of an intervention to tell us how important walkability is in the territory. No, but on a serious note, I am here because we at the Department of Public Works are really committed to pushing forward our multimodal transportation system, including not just walkability, but accessibility, of course, bicycling, electric vehicles, every mode of transportation that you can possibly think of. That's where we're really headed. For us, of course, we talk about the role that we have in building a more walkable community, right? We are, as a territory, we're in a very unique position that we probably won't see for our generation again, which is we are in a position to transform the territory from the perspective of all of our infrastructure projects. And that's really the way that we're looking at it. So it's holistically, comprehensively seeing how we can adjust everything, not just the functionality of our buildings, of course, our streets, our sidewalks, making sure that every type of transportation is accommodated in those areas, but how we can make them a part of all these projects that we have, whether it's through federal funding, through local funding, or through different grants that have been available. So for us, it really is an exciting time. And I know, of course, our folks, I just want to give a special shout out to Peter Gajewski, which is one of our folks in the Office of Highway Engineering. This is very important to him personally as well. We recently actually sponsored a bike riding workshop where we actually taught folks about the basic safety elements of cycling, but also educating drivers, right? Those of us that drive on a daily basis, what simple hand signals are, because now that we no longer use hand signals, a lot of us have forgotten what they mean. So just seeing when a cyclist is giving a simple hand signal, what does that mean? Even for us at the Department of Public Works, making sure our bus operators on the road respect our cyclists and know that it is time to share the road. So we've been having those simple conversations because I know a lot of cyclists ride at the wee hours of the morning when the buses are on the road as well. But it really goes a step further, right? And we talked about the Complete Streets legislation that was approved this year. Even prior to the approval of the legislation, we had been taking an approach where we've been including folks like our territorial ADA coordinator to make sure that our sidewalks are actually meeting those standards. We're including folks from the different aspects of our community so that we're not just looking at things from an engineering perspective but really looking at the functionality of some of the projects that we have. Of course, we know Dr. Sims talked about it. When we were shut in, we realized how much we needed our outdoor spaces. For me at the time, I wasn't the commissioner, but it was so delightful to see all those people walking across the promenade, to see people using it in ways that it had not been imagined to use before. It was really, for me, when I took the seat, it was, all right, so how do we push that forward? How do we make sure that every segment of our community, whether young, middle-aged, our senior citizens, how do we make sure that they feel comfortable using our sidewalks, using some of these projects, and exercising and getting out there, like we talked about, relieving that mental stress and actually putting longevity in place. So every project that we have, we try to look at how we can implement sidewalks, bike paths, and the like. I know right now we have a number of projects across the territory where we are including segments of sidewalks, we are including bike paths where we can, and again, we're just going to keep this pushing. We are talking to our federal partners to make sure that it is a plan of our part of our transportation improvement plan, and of course, we're using that for any grant applications that we do. So this is something that we're doing from a comprehensive perspective. Thank you guys again for inviting us. I know Peter is going to talk about all the initiatives we did. Of course, we installed some pedestrian signs that have been pretty effective. So thank you for the invitation. I look forward to learning. I look forward to the collaboration, and just look forward to really transforming the territory. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Ms. Dahlstrom, welcome to the Virgin Islands. And the Center for Disease Control and Prevention is one of the places that we look to for collection of, for compilation of information that we collect, and sometimes perhaps we wouldn't collect if you didn't ask for it, unfortunately. And also a place that tends to offer opportunities to do things in an unusual way. So we're grateful that you're here, and we look forward to hearing why you think you should be here and how you see everything fitting together in this walkability project.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I'm honored to be here today with all of you and honored that I had the opportunity to travel here. And from my perspective, I'm here to learn about what all the great work that you are doing and help to support at the CDC. We're here to help support the work that you all are doing, because I think we've heard this already so many times today. This work is about collaboration, and I'm really excited to see the number of interdisciplinary representatives that we have here today, because this work is all about working together in collaboration and communication. So I just wanted to share a little bit today about some of the work that we have been involved with. We've already heard about some of it. I'm going to ask if my slides are accessible, and if they aren't, that's okay. We'll go without the slides. If so, I'll pause for a minute. Nope, okay. Well, we're going to proceed without the slides then. So as we've heard about already, we have had a number of projects that we've been involved with through the Islands projects that we work on at CDC to support walkability. And we consider this as part of a broader initiative that we have at CDC it's called the Active People, Healthy Nation initiative. And I just wanted to share a little bit about, if you've already heard about the health benefits of physical activity, so I don't think I'm going to talk about that again, but just to know that we really look at it from a perspective of the health benefits that you can get in the immediate. And for example, you heard from Dr. Sims in terms of reducing anxiety. That's a big one. Also looking at long-term, physical activity can reduce up to 8 chances up to 8 different types of cancer. And so we look at it both from the immediate and long-term benefits from physical activity. We also look at it from the community benefits perspective, looking at the economic benefits of physical activity, and looking at increases in retail activity, for example, as people can walk to places that they might want to shop at, increased property values as there are more walkable communities in that neighborhood, and also supporting neighborhood revitalization. We're talking a lot today about the rebuilding that you all have been doing, and really it's part of that rebuilding effort, and also reducing healthcare costs. And we heard about that from the governor. Know that you all and everywhere we're seeing increase in our older adults, and really needing opportunities for access to activity-friendly communities for older adults. And safety. We've heard this already as well. And we have our slides up. If you can go to slide 3, that would be great. Excellent. Okay, and so from a safety perspective, opportunities for people to be active in the way that we design our streets to be able to promote physical activity. And then productivity. We know that physical activity improves productivity because people who are physically active tend to take fewer sick days. Next slide, please. So Active People, Healthy Nation is CDC's national initiative to get 27 million more Americans physically active by 2027. As I just mentioned, increased physical activity improves health, quality of life, and reduced healthcare costs. Now, we see this as a broader effort, and I'll just share a little bit about the work that we're doing with Active People, Healthy Nation. So next slide, please. So there are 7 evidence-based strategies that Active People, Healthy Nation is based on. And these are based on independent reviews of scientific evidence. And I'm not going to go through all of them. The one I want to highlight today that we are all here to talk about today is activity-friendly routes to everyday destinations. And that is the activity-friendly routes. Those are the sidewalks, the bike lanes, access to transit, for people to go to the places that they go to every day, like their jobs, healthcare, schools. We need to have the infrastructure in place so that people can easily get to the places they need to go to every day. And so you'll see on this slide, it talks about complete streets policy, and that's the first step that you all have taken, not the first step, but one of the really important steps that you all have taken in terms of getting the policy in place to support activity-friendly routes. We also talk about zoning policies to have mixed use, for example, where people can have access to destinations that are near where they live. And then comprehensive or master plans that include walking, biking, and transit, and safe routes. Safe routes can be to schools, safe routes to parks. Those are all about creating the infrastructure that we've been talking about already. And so I also want to highlight at the base of what we call the signpost of our 7 strategies is equitable and inclusive access. And Dr. McKayle talked about the importance of reducing disparities, because we really see that this work is about creating access, especially for people who are in need of it the most. So next slide, please. I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide because you've heard a lot about this, but I just wanted to highlight some of the initiatives that we've been involved with at the CDC. So you heard at the beginning, Dr. Ragster mentioned we call it the EPI-A. This was a study we had a representative, 2 representatives from CDC participate in on assessing the walkability of the U.S. Virgin Islands. That started in 2016 and really looked at some of the street level supports for walking and looking at sidewalks, lighting, bus stops, for example. And then there was the 2017 Walkability Action Institute, and that really laid the foundation for a lot of this work. And then, of course, you had the catastrophic hurricanes that hit the island. And so I'm kind of fast forwarding now to where we're at. We have, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's called our, the shorthand is our Islands Project, but it's prevention and control of chronic disease and associated risk factors in the Pacific Islands, U.S. Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. And so we have a number of projects that we're working on to address reductions in chronic disease prevention and walkability. And so we are just really honored for the opportunity to collaborate with the National Association for Chronic Disease Directors, who's here today, with Dr. McKayle and CIRC. We really see this as really a great opportunity to continue this work forward. And our summit today and our action planning that will come out of this. Today is a really important day to bring everyone together again, and we see this as the beginning of work that we want to help to support moving into the future and the action planning that comes out of this. Next slide, please, and I will wrap up. So this is just a slide that talks about all of the multi-sectoral partnerships. These are all the roles that you all are involved in, your interdisciplinary roles, and everybody can be involved with Active People, A Healthy Nation. Everybody can be involved with the walkability and work that we are doing together, because we all have a role to play. And so we have some resources on our website you're welcome to take a look at. They have highlight different things that we can do at each level. A lot of you are already doing these, but you may get some other ideas. And then on the next slide, you will see our QR code where you can actually, if anybody wants to take out their phone and scan it, please feel free. We are always trying to encourage people to sign up for Active People Healthy Nation. We do a monthly newsletter where we highlight some different resources, different projects. I would love to highlight some of the work that you all are doing in our newsletter. And I just thank you all for this opportunity. And feel free to leave the slide up if you want, just for a second. The last slide is my contact information. And thank you so much. I look forward to the coming days and our opportunity to talk more.
Just go. Just let me finish. I'll stop it. Go ahead. Okay. We are thinking we're going to go to a break, but first of all, I want you to say congratulations and thank you to set of people who actually help us get back on time. Thank you. Nice. All right. So I would like to tell you that this is going to be a gift, but it probably isn't going to be. We started this thing saying we're talking about leadership. Leaders have hard things to think about. And I want to know if we have about another 5-7 minutes. So I haven't heard anybody say the context for this is 3 islands with different topography and limits in size. Often the solutions that we bring are for much larger places with very different topographies, okay? So please tell me, all 4 of you may answer, or one, how do you think we would integrate that into our strategic priorities? Because it seems to me that the business of saying, well, we want to, people think it's just about throwing a bunch of resources, but it has to be more than that. The thinking about how you do things makes a big difference. One of the things you have to realize is you live in a place where we are still dealing with what we did when we had almost nothing and we just tried to move forward. The Solberg Mountain, the road to Solberg, the governor at the time told this gentleman who was working at Public Works to design the road and build it. Okay, that's how it got built. He was an engineer. So you have a road that goes up a major mountain, the highest place in St. Thomas, and there are many issues that probably should not be there. So the question is, what are we doing today with all these educated people sitting around, people who live on the place most of their lives? How are we changing that?
I guess I'll go first since it's
Thank you.
I feel like you're staring at me particularly. Good morning again. My name is Derek Gabriel, Commissioner for the Department of Public Works. So I think a large part of it is what we talked about, right? As we undertake some of these larger projects that we have, how do we look at kind of retrofitting some of these areas to accommodate sidewalks, to accommodate bike lanes, to accommodate accessibility? But I think a large part of it is also educating the public, right? Because we talk about it, we have several projects where to be able to accommodate a sidewalk or a bike lane, we need to make small property acquisitions, just so that we could expand the infrastructure. So it's really, we talk about collaboration. It really is just more than about talking about it, but being about it, right? So we have certain projects where we have large tracts of acquisition. And I say, like, it's a part that all of us need to take part in. I know, Dr. McKayle, you talked about wanting to be able to leave your house and ride your bike and walk in certain areas. Well, along those ways, we have to make sure that, like we talked about, the topography is able to be accommodated. And of course, anything is possible with creative engineering. But I think, moreover, it's making sure that we're able to adjust so that in certain areas we can use bicycles, and in other areas we make sure that you're able to switch to a different mode, whether it's a car or walking. Again, for us at the Department of Public Works, that's where policy like the Complete Streets policy comes in place. That's where we try to be creative, and that's where we try to really have those collaborative talks so that people understand what exactly goes into a successful project like that.
Okay, no, thank you. Anybody else want to
Sure.
take that one? Yes, thank you,
Yeah.
Dr. Sims.
So, Dr. Sims, Department of Health. So I think once that is done, and this is going in a good order, so once the roads and everything are in place, then we have to get the people out.
Okay.
Mindset is huge. Like the governor mentioned, because of who he is, he has an escort, etc. That plays a lot for people that don't have that. So once we have everything in place, then it's really going to take us as leaders to kind of pull who we lead and say, hey, we're going to be We're getting off at 4 o'clock every Friday, and this is what we're doing. We're walking.
Okay.
We're getting off at this hour, or we're meeting on Saturday morning, we're walking. Or, I don't want to put anything out there that's not a reality, but maybe you can barter some things. You know what I mean? You want a day off, you want to close down early, let's do a little walk. And that's your benefit. So the mindset and the comfortability is restored. Because like you said, Dr. Ragster, we're still living I'm from Trinidad, but I've lived here long enough. We just put that out there. In a place that I've heard long enough where certain things are the same, but the resources have increased. So you may have very tight roads still, but we all have cars. So now we have to kind of marry the reality to where we want to go and what we want to do.
No, that makes sense. Anybody else? Dr. Michael?
Okay, thank you. So from the research perspective, one of the things that I would say, you spoke about 3 different islands and you talked about topography, but I will say in the work that we have done at CERC, one of the things that we do know is when we go into communities and we speak to community members, the issues and concerns are different based on stressors and other factors across the islands. So that would be something that we would need to be sensitive to when we engage in this type of work. And I think to add to what Dr. Sims is saying, one of the really, really important elements of this work is not just communication across collaborators, but it is communicating and educating our community about the benefits of active living, the benefits of walking, the benefits of riding a bicycle, the benefits of getting up and going on a hike. It isn't just, well, let's do that because you have a couple minutes and you should do that. To be able to show members of our community, from children to adolescents to young adults to mature adults to persons in their August years, how is this linked to quality of life? How is this linked to reducing the disease burden for yourself in terms of healthcare cost, for looking at your family members, for looking at your neighborhood? How do we bring this to a place where we're thinking of an individual taking a little bit more control and ownership for their health, our families, our communities, and really then saying, what do we want our communities to look like? What do we want our territory to look like in years to come? We know that we have an aging population, you mentioned that, and so it becomes really critical as we look at not only physical topography, but some of the other realities of what's happening within our communities to factor that in as we address this issue.
No, absolutely. Did you want to say something?
I
Mrs.
was
Dahlstrom.
going to say Dr. Michael spoke beautifully about this, and I was just going to highlight, I think, the importance of community engagement, and Dr. Michael talked about that, because the way we look at this work is there are a lot of opportunities with projects like demonstration projects that I know that you all have been working on here to get community input, and getting that community input from the beginning, like we talked about today, getting stakeholder input from the beginning is so important to help make sure that those improvements that we're looking at can actually benefit the community and it fits their needs, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that we're building this for. And I also keep thinking of the Field of Dreams analogy, and you can't just build it and they will come. You have to be able to connect the dots and have the infrastructure, but also be educating people and engaging people so they understand how they can utilize that. So, thank you.
No, thank you. We're going to take a break, but I wanted to just throw this out so that the next set of panelists coming up could be ready. I didn't ask the question, do we have too many cars and vehicles on the road? Nobody talks about that. okay? That's a size and a capacity issue that the territory needs to address. You can try to make the roads as walkable as you want to, but if you have too many cars, eventually you're going to have a problem you cannot overcome. So the question is how we deal with transportation needs to be in this pool, I would imagine. And as we close, let me just say for every person in this room, you have to keep thinking about if you ask people to go outside, how will you handle a temperature that is degrees more than it's been in the past? And despite our ability to handle a fair amount of heat because we've been relatively acclimated, we are going to be hitting those points where we no longer can manage it. Okay? So the question is, how do we set up a walkability strategy that addresses that as well? Okay, now we're talking about, are we thinking about shifting times when people work and when people are outside? Are we talking about teaching people how to dress and move differently? Remember, there used to be a time when everybody had an umbrella and a hat? There was a reason. They were walking and it was hot. So now we may have to go back to looking at other things like that. And so as you think about strategies going forward in the next section, I hope that those things will come together. Leaders, you're responsible for helping people to pull this stuff together. So with that, I'm going to ask you to give this first set of panelists a round of applause for their contributions. And they will be in other panels along the way. And we're going to take a 15-minute break, and then we will be back at 10:45. Thank you all.
On June 2nd, Governor Albert Bryan Jr. met with officials from the Department of Health and representatives from Flat Architects as a part of the department's stakeholder outreach discussions for the first look at the design of the new Charles Harwood Medical Complex in Christiansted. The presentation, led by Flat Principal Steve Jackson, reviewed the project's cost and timeline. Also included in the discussion was a review of previous visioning sessions conducted by the department. Here is what participants had to say.
We would like individuals walking into that building to be able to feel better. We want to create an environment which we are caring for not just you, but also for your family members. We want to be able to care for you and prevent illness from occurring so that you're not hospitalized in the future.
I think the greatest impact for the community for this project is more than the building. It's what it represents to the community, that the Department of Health is there. They're progressive, they're innovative in their technologies and their ability to serve patient care and their dedication to them.
This new facility should stand for excellence. This facility can best serve and engage the community by compelling, by its presence, its state-of-the-art, by its efficiency, compel persons to want to come to receive the services that are being provided out of the complex.
We definitely want, when persons are seeking advancements in healthcare, that the least of their problems is the structure, the amenities in the structure, the services offered. My vision is to have all of those things from inception to conclusion be as seamless as possible.
Demolition of the current facility will commence this year, and construction on the new clinic is expected to begin in 2023. In great news for public housing residents in the town of Frederiksted, the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority is working to complete a $2.6 million recovery project to repair residential units in the Lagoon complex. Jason Brown, construction manager for the authority, is on site with more information.
Construction began here at Fritz Lawat on April 9th of 2021 with a completion date of August of 2024. Celestine Construction is contracted to complete this task, demoing of existing concrete decks, the removal of the curtain wall windows that exist at this time. At this point, 16 decks have been completely demoed and reconstructed, along with new Miami windows, as well as new foam panel wall that was inserted to harden the structure. The funding source for this project came from FEMA and insurance proceeds. After completion of this project, the residents will have a fortified hurricane-proof home to live in.
Thank you for that update, Jason. Over on St. Thomas, mutual connections, share information, lobby for reform, and support each other's initiatives. In more good news for Frederiksted, the Virgin Islands Housing Authority is continuing its mission to reinvent public housing in the territory. The authority recently held a panel discussion hosted by contractor Urban Land Institute, which included interviews with 75 local stakeholders on their vision for Freedom City. The week-long schedule took ULI staff and other stakeholders on a tour of the town area and to various meetings, which ended with a presentation on preliminary findings and next steps at the Delta Door Center. VIHA Executive Director Robert Graham gave opening remarks at the session.
So the purpose of our service panel is to take all the ideas, distill them, and to be able to then deal with how is the Housing Authority dealing with its redevelopment plan, replacing all of our old public housing. How are we investing in our people in those new developments, and how we are working to ensure that the developments that we are building are energy efficient.
Business owners, contractors, and consultants interested in doing business with the recovery should visit the ODR website for an updated list of open bid announcements and detailed information. Recently, the Department of Health closed an RFP for the abatement and demolition of the Charles Howard facility, and the Virgin Islands Housing Authority closed its solicitation for the revitalization of the D. Hamilton Jackson Terrace and Alfonso Piggy Gerard complex. For more information on other bid announcements, as well as up-to-date news on all disaster recovery projects in the territory, log on Larissa Ellis. On June 2nd, Governor Albert Bryan Jr. met with officials from the Department of Health and representatives from Flat Architects as a part of the department's stakeholder outreach discussions for the first look at the design of the new Charles Harwood Medical Complex in Christiansted. The presentation, led by Flat Principal Steve Jackson, reviewed the project's cost and timeline. Also included in the discussion was a review of previous visioning sessions conducted by the department. Here is what participants had to say.
We would like individuals walking into that building to be able to feel better. We want to create an environment which we are caring for not just you, but also for your family members. We want to be able to care for you and prevent illness from occurring so that you're not hospitalized in the future.
I think the greatest impact for the community for this project is more than the building. It's what it represents to the community, that the Department of Health is there. They're progressive, they're innovative in their technologies and their ability to serve patient care and their dedication to them.
This new facility should stand for excellence. This facility can best serve and engage the community by compelling, by its presence, its state-of-the-art, by its efficiency, compel persons to want to come to receive the services that are being provided out of the complex.
We definitely want, when persons are seeking advancements in healthcare, that the least of their problems is the structure, the amenities in the structure, the services offered. My vision is to have all of those things from inception to conclusion be as seamless as possible.
Demolition of the current facility will commence this year, and construction on the new clinic is expected to begin in 2023. In great news for public housing residents in the town of Frederiksted, the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority is working to complete a $2.6 million recovery project to repair residential units in the Lagoon complex. Jason Brown, construction manager for the authority, is on site with more information.
Construction began here at Fritz Lawat on April 9th of 2021 with a completion date of August of 2024. Celestine Construction is contracted to complete this task, demoing of existing concrete decks, the removal of the curtain wall windows that exist at this time. At this point, 16 decks have been completely demoed and reconstructed, along with new Miami windows, as well as new foam panel wall that was inserted to harden the structure. The funding source for this project came from FEMA and insurance proceeds. After completion of this project, the residents will have a fortified hurricane-proof home to live in.
Thank you for that update, Jason. Over on St. Thomas, mutual connections, share information, lobby for reform, and support each other's initiatives. In more good news for Frederiksted, the Virgin Islands Housing Authority is continuing its mission to reinvent public housing in the territory. The authority recently held a panel discussion hosted by contractor Urban Land Institute, which included interviews with 75 local stakeholders on their vision for Freedom City. The week-long schedule took ULI staff and other stakeholders on a tour of the town area and to various meetings, which ended with a presentation on preliminary findings and next steps at the Delta Door Center. VIHA Executive Director Robert Graham gave opening remarks at the session.
So the purpose of our service panel is to take all the ideas, distill them, and to be able to then deal with how is the Housing Authority dealing with its redevelopment plan, replacing all of our old public housing. How are we investing in our people in those new developments, and how we are working to ensure that the developments that we are building are energy efficient.
Business owners, contractors, and consultants interested in doing business with the recovery should visit the ODR website for an updated list of open bid announcements and detailed information. Recently, the Department of Health closed an RFP for the abatement and demolition of the Charles Howard facility, and the Virgin Islands Housing Authority closed its solicitation for the revitalization of the D. Hamilton Jackson Terrace and Alfonso Piggy Gerard complex. For more information on other bid announcements, as well as up-to-date news on all disaster recovery projects in the territory, log on Larissa Ellis. On June 2nd, Governor Albert Bryan Jr. met with officials from the Department of Health and representatives from Flat Architects as a part of the department's stakeholder outreach discussions for the first look at the design of the new Charles Harwood Medical Complex in Christiansted. The presentation, led by Flat Principal Steve Jackson, reviewed the project's cost and timeline. Also included in the discussion was a review of previous visioning sessions conducted by the department. Here is what participants had to say.
We would like individuals walking into that building to be able to feel better. We want to create an environment which we are caring for not just you, but also for your family members. We want to be able to care for you and prevent illness from occurring so that you're not hospitalized in the future.
I think the greatest impact for the community for this project is more than the building. It's what it represents to the community, that the Department of Health is there. They're progressive, they're innovative in their technologies and their ability to serve patient care and their dedication to them.
This new facility should stand for excellence. This facility can best serve and engage the community by compelling, by its presence, its state-of-the-art, by its efficiency, compel persons to want to come to receive the services that are being provided out of the complex.
We definitely want, when persons are seeking advancements in healthcare, that the least of their problems is the structure, the amenities in the structure, the services offered. My vision is to have all of those things from inception to conclusion be as seamless as possible.
Demolition of the current facility will commence this year, and construction on the new clinic is expected to begin in 2023. In great news for public housing residents in the town of Frederiksted, The Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority is working to complete a $2.6 million recovery project to repair residential units in the Lagoon complex. Jason Brown, construction manager for the authority, is on site with more information.
Construction began here at Fritz Lawat on April 9th of 2021 with a completion date of August of 2024. Celestine Construction is contracted to complete this task, demoing of existing concrete decks, the removal of the curtain wall windows that exist at this time. At this point, 16 decks have been completely demoed and reconstructed, along with new Miami windows, as well as new foam panel wall that was inserted to harden the structure. The funding source for this project came from FEMA and insurance proceeds. After completion of this project, the residents will have a fortified hurricane-proof home to live in.
Thank you for that update, Jason. Over on St. Thomas, mutual connections, share information, lobby for reform, and support each other's initiatives. In more good news for Frederiksted, the Virgin Islands Housing Authority is continuing its mission to reinvent public housing in the territory. The authority recently held a panel discussion hosted by contractor Urban Land Institute, which included interviews with 75 local stakeholders on their vision for Freedom City. The week-long schedule took ULI staff and other stakeholders on a tour of the town area and to various meetings, which ended with a presentation on preliminary findings and next steps at the Delta Door Center. VIHA Executive Director Robert Graham gave opening remarks at the session.
So the purpose of our service panel is to take all the ideas, distill them, and to be able to then deal with how is the Housing Authority dealing with its redevelopment plan, replacing all of our old public housing. How are we investing in our people in those new developments, and how we are working to ensure that the developments that we are building are energy efficient.
Business owners, contractors, and consultants interested in doing business with the recovery should visit the ODR website for an updated list of open bid announcements and detailed information. Recently, the Department of Health closed an RFP for the abatement and demolition of the Charles Howard facility, and the Virgin Islands Housing Authority closed its solicitation for the revitalization of the D. Hamilton Jackson Terrace and Alfonso Piggy Gerard complex. For more information on other bid announcements, as well as up-to-date news on all disaster recovery projects in the territory, log on Larissa Ellis. On June 2nd, Governor Albert Bryan Jr. met with officials from the Department of Health and representatives from Flat Architects as a part of the department's stakeholder outreach discussions for the first look at the design of the new Charles Harwood Medical Complex in Christiansted. The presentation, led by Flat Principal Steve Jackson, reviewed the project's cost and timeline. Also included in the discussion was a review of previous visioning sessions conducted by the department. Here is what participants had to say.
We would like individuals walking into that building to be able to feel better. We want to create an environment which we are caring for, not just you, but also for your family members. We want to be able to care for you and prevent illness from occurring so that you're not hospitalized in the future.
I think the greatest impact for the community for this project is more than the building. It's what it represents to the community, that the Department of Health is there. They're progressive, they're innovative in their technologies and their ability to serve patient care and their dedication to them.
This new facility should stand for excellence. This facility can best serve and engage the community by compelling, by its presence, its state-of-the-art, by its efficiency, compel persons to want to come to receive the services that are being provided out of the complex.
We definitely want, when persons are seeking advancements in healthcare, that the least of their problems is the structure, the amenities in the structure, the services offered. My vision is to have all of those things from inception to conclusion be as seamless as possible.
Demolition of the current facility will commence this year, and construction on the new clinic is expected to begin in 2023. In great news for public housing residents in the town of Frederiksted, the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority is working to complete a $2.6 million recovery project to repair residential units in the Lagoon complex. Jason Brown, construction manager for the authority, is on site with more information.
Construction began here at Fritz Lawat on April 9th of 2021 with a completion date of August of 2024. Celestine Construction is contracted to complete this task, demoing of existing concrete decks, the removal of the curtain wall windows that exist at this time. At this point, 16 decks have been completely demoed and reconstructed, along with new Miami windows, as well as new foam panel wall that was inserted to harden the structure. The funding source for this project came from FEMA and insurance proceeds. After completion of this project, the residents will have a fortified hurricane-proof home to live in.
Thank you for that update, Jason. Over on St. Thomas, mutual connections, share information, lobby for reform, and support each other's initiatives. In more good news for Frederiksted, the Virgin Islands Housing Authority is continuing its mission to reinvent public housing in the territory. The authority recently held a panel discussion hosted by contractor Urban Land Institute, which included interviews with 75 local stakeholders on their vision for Freedom City. The week-long schedule took ULI staff and other stakeholders on a tour of the town area and to various meetings, which ended with a presentation on preliminary findings and next steps at the Delta Door Center. VIHA Executive Director Robert Graham gave opening remarks at the session.
So the purpose of our service panel is to take all the ideas, distill them, and to be able to then deal with how is the Housing Authority dealing with its redevelopment plan, replacing all of our old public housing. How are we investing in our people in those new developments, and how we are working to ensure that the developments that we are building are energy efficient.
Business owners, contractors, and consultants interested in doing business with the recovery should visit the ODR website for an updated list of open bid announcements and detailed information. Recently, the Department of Health closed an RFP for the abatement and demolition of the Charles Howard facility, and the Virgin Islands Housing Authority closed its solicitation for the revitalization of the D. Hamilton Jackson Terrace and Alfonso Piggy Gerard complex. For more information on other bid announcements, as well as up-to-date news on all disaster recovery projects in the territory, Lisa Ellis. On June 2nd, Governor Bryan Jr. met with officials from the Department of Health and representatives from Flat Architects as a part of the department's stakeholder outreach discussions for the first look at the design of the new Charles Harwood Medical Complex in Christiansted. The presentation, led by Flat Principal Steve Jackson, reviewed the project's cost and timeline. Also included in the discussion was a review of previous visioning sessions conducted by the department. Here is what participants had to say.
We would like individuals walking into that building to be able to feel better. We want to create an environment which we are caring for not just you, but also for your family members. We want to be able to care for you and prevent illness from occurring so that you're not hospitalized in the future.
I think the greatest impact for the community for this project is more than the building. It's what it represents to the community, that the Department of Health is there. They're progressive, they're innovative in their technologies and their ability to serve patient care and their dedication to them.
This new facility should stand for excellence. This facility can best serve and engage the community by compelling, by its presence, its state-of-the-art, by its efficiency, compel persons to want to come to receive the services that are being provided out of the complex.
We definitely want, when persons are seeking advancements in healthcare, that the least of their problems is the structure, the amenities in the structure, the services offered. My vision is to have all of those things from inception to conclusion be as seamless as possible.
Demolition of the current facility will commence this year, and construction on the new clinic is expected to begin in 2023. In great news for public housing residents in the town of Frederiksted, the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority is working to complete a $2.6 million recovery project to repair residential units in the Lagoon complex. Jason Brown, construction manager for the authority, is on site with more information.
Construction began here at Fritz Lawat on April 9th of 2021 with a completion date of August of 2024. Celestine Construction is contracted to complete this task, demoing of existing concrete decks, the removal of the curtain wall windows that exist at this time. At this point, 16 decks have been completely demoed and reconstructed, along with new Miami windows, as well as new foam panel wall that was inserted to harden the structure. The funding source for this project came from FEMA and insurance proceeds. After completion of this project, the residents will have a fortified hurricane-proof home to live in.
Thank you for that update, Jason. Over on St. Thomas, mutual connections, share information, lobby for reform, and support each other's initiatives. In more good news for Frederiksted, the Virgin Islands Housing Authority is continuing its mission to reinvent public housing in the territory. The authority recently held a panel discussion hosted by contractor Urban Land Institute, which included interviews with 75 local stakeholders on their vision for Freedom City. The week-long schedule took ULI staff and other stakeholders on a tour of the town area and to various meetings, which ended with a presentation on preliminary findings and next steps at the Delta Door Center. VIHA Executive Director Robert Graham gave opening remarks at the session.
So the purpose of our service panel is to take all the ideas, distill them, and to be able to then deal with how is the Housing Authority dealing with its redevelopment plan, replacing all of our old public housing. How are we investing in our people in those new developments, and how we are working to ensure that the developments that we are building are energy efficient.
Business owners, contractors, and consultants interested in doing business with the recovery should visit the ODR website for an updated list of open bid announcements and detailed information. Recently, the Department of Health closed an RFP for the abatement and demolition of the Charles Harwood facility, and the Virgin Islands Housing Authority closed its solicitation for the revitalization of the D. Hamilton Jackson Terrace and Alfonso Piggy Gerard complex. For more information on other bid announcements, as well as up-to-date news on all disaster recovery projects in the territory.
Welcome back. You are now in the second half of the morning's activities for the USVI Walkability Institute Summit for 2022, and we're glad you're here with us. We started this session earlier this morning with looking at different aspects of the leadership of how we were going to be dealing with walkability in the territory, and now we have some additional folks to add to the complexity of this mosaic that we're making in terms of developing strategic priorities. So we're going to start off with a representative from the National Association of Chronic Disease Directors, and her name is Karma Harris, not yet Ms. Harris, and then Mr. Mark Fenton, who is a part of the team helping to put this together and is an adjunct professor at Tufts University on the National Public Health Planning and Transportation as his area of consulting. And then we will be speaking with the Executive Director of the VI Housing Authority, and Mr. Robert Graham. And if we're able to make the connections, and I believe we will also have Ms. Sherilyn Pogson from the AARP of the U.S. Virgin Islands speaking on this panel, and that will wrap up with a discussion this morning. Now, I want to thank you all for being here and reiterate the question that I made earlier to the other panelists, which is that when you begin, could you also tell us why you think it's a good idea for you to be here? And then please let us know something about how your institution or the area that you're working with, you know, has contributed to the whole business of walkability here in the territory or in general. So with that, we're going to start with you, Ms. Harris, and thank you for being here.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Karma Harris. I'm going to stand up. I am with the National Association of Chronic Disease Directors, or NACDD for short. Teron, go ahead and hit next slide, please. You can see our logo here. It's a mouthful, but I'll read you our mission statement. Our mission is to improve the health of the public by strengthening state and territory leadership and expertise for chronic disease prevention and control for states and territories across the nation. Part of that, preventing chronic disease, is really addressing those risk factors that cause chronic disease. And some of that is physical inactivity. And when our environments do not support us to be physically active, most of us won't be physically active. And so that's really kind of what we can contribute in coming here. We work very closely with the CDC. We're very bought into walkability efforts on the mainland and in the islands. And you're going to hear a little bit about that over the next few minutes. Next slide. If you follow with me kind of clockwise, we'll start in the top right corner, but we are a membership-driven association. Our main constituents are state health departments in U.S. territories, particularly chronic disease units within those entities. All of our projects are either chronic disease specific or we address risk factors that lead to chronic diseases. Right now, and I will boast about this, right now we have 45 different projects within our umbrella of projects that we're working on to mitigate chronic diseases and prevent them. We are headquartered in Decatur, Georgia, but even though, and we'll kind of jump to the left side up here, even though our main constituency is state health departments and chronic disease units within the islands, we also worked with 125 regions and local communities since 2008. And that's important because we've done all this through our walkability efforts, our healthy communities efforts. And in the last 2 years, I'm happy to say that we've extended our walkability to the CNMI, so the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands. And we've been really fortunate and a really fun pleasure for us is inheriting the work that you guys have been doing since 2017. So we are now the funding partner with CDC and hopefully providing that funding for years to come, we hope, and that support in continuing this amazing work. So we basically do all things chronic disease prevention. We really want to set the bar and be that go-to organization. I think we've done a good job, but it takes working with great partners like you all to make that happen. Next slide. So at the end of the day, you may or may not can see these pictures well, but at NACDD, we believe that communities, states, and islands everywhere should be designed such that active transportation, physical activity, and places of interest can be universally accessible by all people. If we don't have those supports in place, we can't expect people to go walk and feel safe to get on their bikes and bike down the hill to where they need to go. Next slide. And so our walkability efforts really came about in a couple different ways. We are funded by the CDC Division of Nutrition, Physical Activity, and Obesity, which is where Christina represents. You heard her speak a few minutes ago. Our efforts started back in 2015 when the United States Surgeon General issued the new call to action on walking and walkable communities. Since then, we really monitor the work that Mark and I do on the mainland and in the islands after the updated physical activity guidelines and CDC's Active People, Healthy Nation effort, which is the most recent initiatives promoting physical activity and helping people level up their activity. Next slide. So it looks like we might have skipped one. There we go. There's two projects that I get the fun pleasure of working with, and sometimes it doesn't even feel like work because I have so much fun doing it. But Mark and I work together to lead a Walkability Action Institute on the mainland, and then we do a modified version of that in our island walkability efforts with you guys, with the CNMI, and you'll see in parentheses there, go ahead and go to the next slide. We're hoping to replicate a lot of what you all have done with the island of Puerto Rico. And so this map here is really a snapshot of everywhere that we're kind of trying to cast a wide net and do this work. We think is really important. And we also acknowledge that the work in the islands is different than the work in the mainland. We're getting best practices from both locations, and you all, to be honest, are leaders in this. We're going to be looking to you all for the great work that comes out. I will tell you one success that's been coming up this morning already is the fact that we work with states. I've worked with 32 different states, 77 locations in 32 states, and I have never gotten the amount of quality leaders and partners in one room that you all have brought together today. So that speaks to what we have in here in terms of partnerships and disciplines. Next slide. So you might say, well, how is the island the same, the island efforts the same as the efforts on the mainland? We have what I call our secret sauce, and there are certain common denominators that ring true for the efforts in the islands and the mainlands, and one of them you've already heard about today. Interdisciplinary partnerships. We are intentional about bringing people from different fields together, and the reason why is because those of us in public health, we know we rely on our friends in other disciplines to get this work done. Health is not enough to sell this and recreate the way that we live, recreate the communities that we live in. You'll hear the term a lot, stakeholders. We've heard the first panel say it. We all have a stake in this work. And I'd like to challenge you all to think of a different word. I love stakeholders, but think of it like share owners, shareholders. We all have a share in this work. It's more than just a stake. We share in the responsibility to leave things a little bit better than we find it. We share in the responsibility to redesign roads and sidewalks and promote health and do everything we can to create this environment. We usually bring together national experts. Mark has been that national and international expert with you guys since 2017, and we build these teams, and what we're hoping is that the partners that you all have will continue to come together after this week and form this amazing team that you all already have, and we help people develop team action plans or strategic action plans. That is a lot of what these 2 days are designed after, so you're going to learn more about that. The other thing is, and this is a big one, this is kind of a public health term, so for other disciplines it sometimes is a little odd, but it's pursuing policy, system, and environmental changes to improve walkability, movability, community design, and active transportation. This PSE approach is essential because if those policies aren't in place, if the systems don't match the policies, if the environments aren't changed, people are not going to move. They're not going to be active. And so that's really the types of strategies that we're hoping to bring you all together and really look at. So things like the highway safety plan, we know that's coming up, the complete streets policy that's already been passed, those are part of those PSE types of changes. And the other aspect of that is those are more sustainable over the long term. They affect more people. So without these things in place, these supports, those other programs can't really happen. And sometimes they don't flourish without these. The other part is that we're going to try to be with you, follow your success, help you track those outcomes, and pitch them in a way that's going to keep you what we call grant ready, help you leverage additional funds. Next slide. And so when we think about how we're doing stuff, you'll see in the top right corner, I always tell people, if you had a magic wand, what would you do? Everybody says, well, we have a funding issue. I'm right, but I'm giving you a magic wand today, these next 2 days, and you have no barriers, you have no funding issues. If you had a magic wand, what would you do? Those are the things that we want you to think about. How big would you think if you had no barriers in place? And then put those things down and go after them as if you don't have barriers. Because if you don't do that, you're not going to reach as far as you can go. And so I'm thinking about this, and as I was prepping and working with our team on this, I thought, man, what is our vision for you all? So, and I kind of thought about it, and I wrote it down. One of our visions is we really want to be intentional about interdisciplinary cross-collaboration. We want to bring people, because we all have a stake, a share, and interest in creating a territory that's more walkable and more movable. The other vision I have is that we have a robust pursuance and achievement of many of these policy system environmental change strategies. And it's going to take everybody in this room and all these disciplines to make that happen. We think walkability and movability is a great platform to talk about place-based approaches, racial equity, disability inclusion, and social environmental justice. We may not touch on all of these in these next 2 days, but we're going to be working with you on it. And then finally, a responsible climate, economic vitality, happy and healthy people, resilient infrastructure in people. We envision where all USVI residents and visitors can move about the island safely, willingly, and happily. Next slide. And so I'll close by saying that's our vision. That doesn't mean it's your vision. So the challenge to you all is, what is your vision? Do you have similarities in what you see and what you want from what we kind of envision for you? But that's really for you guys to think about as we kind of embark on this journey together. And closing slide, again, my name's Karma Harris. My email is up here. The team knows how to get in touch with me. We're excited to be your partner. We're excited to be your cheerleader. We want to be more than just a funder. We want to help you along the way as much as we can. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Ms. Harris. You know a veteran when you hear one, don't you? This is somebody that has lots of experience with doing this. Thank you. Mr. Fenton, another person that has a lot of experience with doing this, could you share with us your ideas about how we're looking at walkability here in the territory?
I would, and it's a privilege to be here with you all. And in particular, you know, your opening question is why? Why is it important? Why are you happy to be here? And I'm going to admit, having been working with this program for 5 years now, there's a selfish motivation, which I've gotten to come back and see some friends, some people who started simply as colleagues and who I consider personal friends now. And I want to acknowledge Dr. Lenya Fredericks, who runs the Department of Health's Chronic Disease Program, Mr. Peter Gajewski, who's with the Public Works Department, sort of unsung heroes that just have brought this work and kept it alive for 5 years since we did that 2017 Walkability Institute, and others who aren't in the room, by the way, but who are doing amazing work. Ms. Alma Wingfield with the Virgin Isles Trails Alliance, Desiree Ross, who's really been managing the program, Mr. Schuster with AARP, so instrumental in the passage of the Complete Streets policy. So, and I'm leaving people out. I don't mean to do that, but I just had to acknowledge Peter and Lenya, because they're in the room, and they're not just professional colleagues. I consider them real friends who I've come to have extraordinary respect for the work that they're doing here. So having said that, I have the privilege of, in fact, thinking about and sharing with you to set context for the work we're going to do, this planning work that Karma has just challenged us with, to set context what has happened over the years to bring us to this moment, because there's been a lot of work that's been done already. So, you know, you'll see many photos here. I've had the privilege, in fact, most of Lenya's car, because when I landed at this airport 5 years ago, she was the first person to pick me up, and we drove around, and I said, I'd like to get photos, get a sense of the space. And so I'm surprised we didn't get arrested, frankly, as I was hanging out the window taking lots of these photos, seeing where people are walking and where there are challenges. On the next slide, Tehran, if you would. The first thing that actually CDC funded here was what we called a walkability assessment. Christina alluded to this, where a team from DOH, about 26 people, actually went out and sampled street segments all around around the territory on all 3 islands, a statistically significant subsample. They couldn't look at every road, but they covered over 1,000 segments, about 60 miles of roads, and assessed sort of what is the environment right now for active transportation. Now, we consider the active modes walking, bicycling, and taking transit because from a public health standpoint, each of those trips incurs more physical activity. You're more likely to meet those physical activity recommendations that Christina alluded to. But what we found, or you found in assessing your environment, that almost 80% of the streets have no sidewalks, that some 78% had no actual walkable destinations. Remember, it's not just about a route, but you have to get to something, a school, a park, a playground, shopping. About 6%, only about 6% of intersections actually had quality crossing treatments, painted crosswalks, let alone pedestrian signals and things like that. Only about 5% of street length had bus stops on them, public stops, and something like 50%, I'm sorry, of street length, no lighting. These are just order of magnitude numbers, but they tell you where there are opportunities around very foundational infrastructure opportunities. None of this is in an indictment, but you need to know where you're starting, right? It's a way to, and so as a community, you did this self-assessment to say, where are we, and where do we want to go next? So kudos for that. What we did next was in 2017, in fact, Department of Health, through the CDC funding, hosted with many partners a Walkability Institute. And the fundamentals there were, we talked about best practices in design for the active transportation modes. What have we learned over the last 30 or 40 years as across the country we've tried to make safer places for walking and bicycling, connecting kids to schools, people to their jobs, families to their daily needs. We talked about best practices. You formed teams, one for each island, to think about actual possible demonstration projects. Where could we make low-cost improvements, measure their impact, see the change over time, and we went for walk audits. And indeed, this idea of going out and auditing your environment is not a new one, but we went for walkabouts there. We actually walked from the hospital down to we were on St. Croix to the Sunny Isle Shopping Center, saw lots of pedestrian activity there. And by the way, that's a tool you've continued to use. Peter just hosted a bicycle design training with the Federal Highways Administration. DPW gets credit for this, bringing FHWA here, and that included a bike audit. Peter, you were saying you guys got out and rode up to Frederickstead and when you did the workshop on the island there. Getting out and experiencing the environment is way better than just talking about it theoretically. I can't say that strongly enough. So in the next slide, you can actually see there's Sunny Isle. And one of the things we observed, and the team from St. Croix said, you know, maybe this is where we should do our demonstration project. Lots of pedestrian activity, no marked crosswalk from the shopping center to some of the destinations and the informal transit stop that's on the other side of the road. So indeed, Public Works worked with local resources and teams and so on. Next slide, you'll see some crosswalks. I say a crosswalk that was painted there and some signage that was put in. So kudos to DPW sort of stepping in and saying, okay, this is a logical location. Let's partner up here, do a demonstration. Worked with VI, University of Virgin Islands students to actually collect data. And the next slide shows some of the actual evidence that was collected on that. And what they found was initially, pedestrians, only about 16% of pedestrians were using the crosswalk. But a year later, when they went back to collect follow-up data, closer to 60%. So pedestrians were coming to the crosswalk. Dramatic reduction in speed. You saw that right after the installation, speed was about 24 miles an hour. Average speed had dropped by almost 25% to 18 miles per hour. Crosswalks can sometimes do that. A high visibility crosswalk makes drivers more aware. Interestingly, driver yielding behavior wasn't that great. Even after it had been in place for a year, still 70 to 80% of pedestrians had to wait before some number of vehicles had passed, meaning there might be an educational opportunity here, which, by the way, lets me acknowledge that Danielle Cranston with the Office of Highway Safety is here and working on your highway safety plan. And one of the things you said to me earlier was maybe one of our priorities needs to be driver education as well as pedestrian education. We want pedestrians to know you're best off going to the crosswalk. We want drivers to know when you see a pedestrian at the crosswalk, you're supposed to yield for it, right? And that's what this multidisciplinary approach that Karma, Christina, all of the speakers this morning have been alluding to. That's when you really get this thing to work. So that's a great example. By the way, you did some other really cool demonstration projects right here on St. Thomas. Next slide. They identified that there's a lot of pedestrian activity around Perimeter Road between some of the medical buildings over there. So Peter, again, got to acknowledge DPW's hard work on this. On the next slide, you'll see they actually went out and observed and saw lots of pedestrian activity, but no actual marked crosswalk at that crossing across where the drainage ditch is between the two lanes of the road. So, next slide, you see they actually painted in crosswalks. They did some cool footprints on the actual pedestrian bridge. They improved the access on either side so it would be accessible to wheelchairs and wheeled vehicles. So all of those concrete improvements, and again, data being collected on how is that changing driver behavior, pedestrian behavior, is it making it actually safer? One more slide, if you would. On these kinds of demonstration projects, I want to acknowledge AARP and Vital, working again with DPW on the Christiansted bypass. Wonderful pedestrian facility, but there've never been marked bicycle facilities there. And you guys are working on actually improving and marking appropriate bicycle facilities, bicycle lanes where there's enough room, or using what are called shared use arrows, where a bike and a motor vehicle might share the lane. State-of-the-art design techniques right there in Christiansted. So don't tell me you can't do it here, because you are doing it here, much to your credit. So I want to acknowledge all of that. And by the way, the important partners that are playing a role in all of this, right? It's not falling on any one group's shoulders. Next slide. I think, of course, the biggie here is the culmination of these demonstration projects because, frankly, nice demonstration projects are cool. But changing how we do work, just as Mr. Gabriel said this morning, thinking about every time we touch the roadway, accommodating all users, the driver, but also pedestrians, bicyclists, and transit riders. And that's what your Complete Streets policy that you've passed and signed has actually essentially said. It said, we're going to think about everybody all the time. You and I were just talking, Mr. Graham, about the influx of federal funds coming, whether it's the disaster relief funds or the recently passed infrastructure bill. We're going to be seeing money for infrastructure, and what we want to think about is every time we do infrastructure work, are we thinking about all four users, the pedestrian, the bicyclist, transit, motor vehicles? Are we building a resilient infrastructure that's going to be ready to withstand the next disaster and accommodate and take care of our people? I was talking to your director this morning of the Emergency Management Agency here, and Daryl, you were saying, you know, after a disaster, we need people to be able to walk to destinations because we may have power outage, we may have trees across roads, so we need a resilient transportation infrastructure to accommodate all of the time, even in our most challenging times. So, and as you hear the voices and the different disciplines represented in the room, I think we have to acknowledge this is where you're going to be successful. It is that cross-disciplinary collaboration. So I just want to leave you with sort of a pat on the back for the great work you've all been doing, but also great excitement at the notion that I feel like you're going to the next level now, and you're really ramping your game up. So kudos for that, and thank you for the privilege of working with all of you. It's been a real treat for me, and let alone the privilege of getting back to come for another visit. So thank you all very, very much.
Thank you. So will we be able to speak to the representative from AARP online? Yes, I see heads shaking. So Mr. Schuster, who was the president of AARP, was going to be our next speaker. He has asked for Ms. Sherilyn Pogson to replace him, and we will speak with her. She will present virtually.
Hello, good day. Can you hear me okay? Good day, everyone. My name is Mr. Bryan. I am the outreach specialist at the USVI Walkability. And I'm here on behalf of the Association of Researchers to speak with us for tonight. So I want to thank you and allow us the opportunity to provide input on how we all work quite we look here and that we are here
Excuse me, Ms. Pogson. Are you using headphones?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you use your computer mic instead? We're getting a distortion on this side and we can barely understand what you're saying. Take out the headphone and then try speaking in using the computer mic and see if that works.
All right, is that a little bit better?
Repeat, please.
Is that better?
It's a little bit better. Yes, please.
Okay. All right. Do you want me to?
And turn down your volume just a little bit. I think it's getting distorted from the level of the volume.
Okay. How about that?
A little bit more. Either that or sit back from your computer.
Okay.
Yes, stay right there.
Okay.
Yes, please
The
go ahead.
technology, it doesn't work, but we got to work that. So again, let's talk about my name is Cheryl Paxton, and I am the Senior Operations Specialist for ARP Virgin Islands. And as it's been said, I'm here on behalf of Joyce, you're the Director for ARP Virgin Islands. So we thank you for the invitation to participate in the summit and allow ARP to provide input so we can all work to ensure that the Virgin Islands is an age-friendly and so we love to hear the word collaboration, and it's been spoken several times by our previous speakers. ARP Virgin Islands is made up of a small but mighty staff of four. It's been collaborating with volunteers and community shareholders regularly, and we recognize the importance of those relationships and how they help to contribute to the work in our Virgin Islands community. And not only for our 20 members living in the Virgin Islands, but the entire 50 plus population. So we think it's important for ARP to be at this discussion here and now, because we've been part of the National Complete Street Coalition Steering Committee, which is a broad collection of advocates and transportation professionals working to enact complete street policies across the country. So today, over 1,600 complete streets policies that have been passed in the United States. That includes some state governments, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, and so as of right now, the U.S. is projecting that in the Virgin Islands, the population that's 50 plus will be increasing by almost 44% by the year 2030. Our population is aging. And that is something that we need to consider as we're working to make sure that we're adopting policies and making sure that we're putting together support systems and necessary pieces in place that's going to support successful aging and make sure that, again, our communities are going to continue to remain able. And before that, a recent report has been posted where there have been increased pedestrian-related accidents in the territory. So for the past 12 years, there's been approximately 1,100 pedestrian accidents in the territory. So if we average that, that's going to be 91 per year. So most of the injured or killed pedestrians have been persons that are older, senior citizens, and this is a major cause of concern for us. So really and truly, questions that we had to ask ourselves is, when, as I mentioned earlier, we're trying to help shape our community. And so ARP, we want to encourage and be a part of the conversation where we're going to be focusing on community and engagement and the planning, the designing, of all of the street projects throughout the entire territory. And that's where there's the conversation of that's been part of the Complete Streets legislation. And this coalition is going to be a coalition of government agencies that will provide the first phase of that implementation. And so the hope is that by community engagement, part of the discussion, all the necessary shareholders at the table, that we're going to really make sure that we're set forth relevant and important policy that's going to include planning for all modes of transportation. So for us, the complete streets and being a part of the Walkability Summit is important. We really want to make sure that we're focusing on improving the livability of our community. We want to make sure that we're going to be easing the transportation for our residents and also make sure that we're improving public safety and health and our environment. So it doesn't matter if you're 80 or if you're 80, we want to make sure that our community is going to be livable, and that's where our conversations around walkability is going to be helpful, and we are extremely happy to be a part of the Walkability Summit and a part of this group and of the conversation. We continue to be a shareholder to make sure that our Virgin Islands community will continue to be a paradise for. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you very much for trying and helping us, Ms. Paxton. What I heard is that AARP says you're not doing anything without them being a part of development of data, input into policy, and design of things. So, message clear. They have been working already, and we thank them for those efforts because they're a big partner. Most of us do not want to admit this, but we are on the side of the majority of people in the territory. If you are over 55, you're in the majority of the people in the territory. Okay, that means that you have, ARP is one of the groups that you want to talk to, for one thing. And it also means that the challenges that people have as they age become a serious part of the conversation about how will you deal with walkability in the community. And that's what they're trying to make sure that people understand, that there's an organization that's there to help you to make those points come forward and be a big-time shareholder, as Ms. Harris says. So what we're going to do now is ask Mr. Graham, who is someone that I think about his job a lot, because just like we have a lot of elderly citizens, a lot of people don't pay attention to how many people are in public housing or public housing related programs in this territory. Therefore, there's an opportunity for us to make an immense impact on the lives of a significant part of the people here that could use some assistance, that also have a lot to contribute. And he's responsible for making sure that the conditions, the structures, the policies around housing here in the territory are done well. And I want to thank him for the job that he does and ask him to tell us why he thinks he should be here and to give us some idea of what the Housing Authority is doing.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning. A little louder. Good morning. Okay, you're not listening at all, so please stand. Please stand. No, I want you to stand up. It's about mobility. It's about livability. It's about walkability. I'm not going to ask you to run or walk in place, but I want you to do one thing for me. It's promised today that you leave here today and that you will be more active, you will walk more, and you're going to ask 3 other individuals that you know to do the same thing. Can I get agreement on that today? All right, thank you. Please be seated. Carmen said, "You're not stakeholders; you are shareholders." I like that, and I'll start using that phrase to describe our partners. So today, why am I here? Well, my boss told me to be here, but that's not the real reason I'm here. It's because we have to not just talk about it, as said earlier today. I think Commissioner Gabriel said it as well. We have to be about it as well. We have to not just talk about it, we have to be about it. We have to put people first in our planning. In what we do, we have to make sure that whatever we're doing it for people. And in that, we have to make sure that we're planning appropriately. Housing is the infrastructure for living. Infrastructure, sometimes I have to convince our partners in the territory that housing is as important as the next thing. When we say what is important to us, we ordinarily say first food, and then what? Shelter. Food and shelter are clearly the most important things to individuals. And so housing is infrastructure for our people. And I want to say that what do you get when you have research meet the intersection of intentionality? Research at the intersection of intentionality. Well, I'll tell you what we get. We get an individual that has leadership for the people. Dr. McKayle, as part of the Caribbean Exploratory Research Center, she also wears another hat, and that hat is the chairperson of the Housing Authority for almost 10 years. What does that mean? That means that the research that she has done in health outcomes, health disparities and health outcomes, and food, healthy living for individuals. That intentionality, that research, she brought that to the Housing Authority and made sure that in our planning for the people, that we are intentionally making plans that's going to impact individuals' lives and also for it to be sustainable. So I want to share with you the inventory that we have and what we're doing about it. We have 3,000 units of public housing. That's 24 developments and 2 islands, two main islands, St. Thomas and St. Croix. These buildings, these apartments are 60 years old. They have sustained 40 years of hurricanes, about 12 different hurricanes. And the last 2 hurricanes were just the last word in some of the livability for at least one development. 3,000 units of public housing, 300 units at Tutu High Rise. It came down because of the hurricanes. We had to relocate those individuals. But what do you do about planning to replace those? Do you do the same thing? The housing that was built in the 50s and 60s were, I called, cheap housing. Minimum housing standards is what HUD called it back then. But we cannot do the same thing that's been done before. So our intention and what we're doing about it is that we're going to replace all 3,000 units of public housing. It's going to cost $1 billion. At least it cost $1 billion 3 years ago. Now it's more like $1.3, $1.4 billion with the cost of construction, pandemic, and the supply chain disruptions. So what we're going to do with that replacement housing is that we're going to make sure that we are planning for people to be more active, to be more engaged. It was said earlier about the impact of chronic disease. That can be lessened with proper health care, proper food diets, and also proper movement, walkability, livability. So we intend to build housing that is smaller, that's integrated in the community, that is positioned so individuals have access to the amenities that they need. We worked with Peter and the Department of Public Works 5 years ago to see how we can increase the livability and walkability in our developments. Let me put the next slide, please. Next slide. And keep going. One more. We talked about the benefits and values of walking. Clearly, it's the oldest and simplest form of transportation, but we have to do more of it. We talk about it, but we don't do enough of it. And we have to make it possible for the residents that we're building this new housing for, that they're able to do it. Next slide. Keep going. Next one. I want to show go ahead to the next one. And the next one. One more. This is a development that we built. This is a 79-unit senior development, and it's built on a hill. And it's built on the location that it is important. Next slide. This is, of course, you notice the harbor. So in this location, there are 3 public housing developments. And what we did, next slide. What we did was put this senior development in a location that make it easier for seniors to walk to the locations that they needed to go to. Up here is where this sugar estate is built. This is the hospital. This is a retail area that seniors can walk from this location to the hospital. Over here are medical offices. medical facilities, doctor visits. Residents here can walk to this location. They can walk to the hospital. They can walk to the post office. They can walk to the bank in this area. But this whole strip here is retail for the seniors. So intentionally, we built this development at this location to allow the seniors to be able to walk to the destination, not having to have a car at all to get to the things that they need. This is important because we work with Peter to see how can we, at this location, how can we create, in this corridor right here, across from the hospital, how can we create a walking trail for the seniors at this location between the hospital and the medical offices? This is the Daily News over here. We're not able to complete this process right here because this is a gut, but it would be helpful to the seniors if there was a location in this general area that allowed them to walk. So, but they get that walking in when they go to the retail and to the various retail outlets here. But we also have a location right here, Paul Pearson Gardens. How do we make this location more walkable as well? How do we make it easier for them to walk to the downtown area? How do we make it easier for them to go to the retail, the hospital, the medical offices as well? So we have an opportunity in our planning, in our design, to intentionally plan for walkability. Next slide. Over here is Oswald Harris Court. It is a location, this is 300 units of old, ugly public housing that we have an opportunity to change. We can make this location, in addition to the Sugar Estate or Celestino White senior housing, that we can make this complex here, 300 units, we can reduce the density to 150 units and plan to have, well, if we can mix it, we can put seniors and families here, but there's a market right here. They can walk. There is a facility that we can build here, but what we can do here is build housing for seniors intergenerational. By that I mean we can have 30 units right here for individuals that can do the daily activities, the 6 or 7 daily activities without any assistance. And suppose our health deteriorates, so their health deteriorates a little bit, then we can actually do the next 30 units right here so that they may need help with the 5 to 7 daily activities. So we can have support facilities from Department of Health and Department of Human Services in this general area, and we can provide assistance to these individuals here. If, as they age a little bit more and can only do 2 or 3 things in terms of daily activities, we can build a housing here. So individuals can graduate from one location to the second location to the third location. And if we're smart, what we would do back here is do assisted living. So on one location, we are planning for the aging of seniors. We are making sure that they have access to everything that they need in this development. Of course, the only problem we have is to tell the 300 individuals that are there now that they have to move. But we can also plan that as well. We can ensure that we have other locations that these individuals can move to, so that we are making sure that we are planning, and our shareholders, we're making sure our shareholders have input. So what we have done is have the Urban Land Institute, an organization that professionals, real estate planners, land use planners, to come in and do an advisory service panel. In that process, they interview 80 to 100 individuals in the territory to get their ideas about how to make the territory and the housing that we are building, how to make it more palatable, more livable, more walkable. And so in that process, they prepare recommendations for the Housing Authority. And in those recommendations, we implement as many of those recommendations that are feasible into our planning efforts. So we plan to replace 3,000 units of public housing, 3,000 units of public housing in 10 years. So that's 300 units per year. We have 3 developer partners there. We work in planning and designing developments. Each one of those developers will deliver 100 units of housing, affordable housing, each year for the next 10 years.
Again, that's $1 billion, maybe $1 billion two, as we move towards implementing more. Right now, we have 6 projects in construction, in design, and in pre-construction. We expect in 2023 to begin to deliver those 300 units per year for the next 10 years, but planned appropriately, so wherever we can integrate the smaller developments, we're going to do smaller developments of, say, 100 units. This development here is 300 units. We would probably cut that in half to around 150 units, but what we're going to do is reduce the density to provide more open space, more access, more opportunities to walk, and we want to also work with the Department of Parks and Recreation, Planning and Natural Resources, Public Works, to make sure that we're also building parks that are in close proximity to the developments that we're building. That accomplishes a number of things. It allows an area for the residents to move out of developments and could congregate with other individuals, and we're hoping that over time that will also have an impact on less turf protection, more discussion, more integration, like it used to be when we grew up. In the mainland, you have developments and you have parks. Individuals go to those parks, not just in the public housing developments. So we want to integrate out of housing in the broader community, smaller developments with more access, more integration with other individuals in other communities. So with that, I'm going to wrap up and let you guys get to lunch. But I want to say that we've talked about the economic benefits. We talk about all the benefits associated with walkability, but we have to be about it. We have to embrace it, and we have to plan and work together. So with that, I want to say that we welcome ideas from everyone as we do our planning, and we appreciate your participation here today, and keep your promise to do more walking, and other individuals that come into contact with you, make sure that they're doing it as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you Thank you very, very much, Mr. Graham. As you can see, that's a great place to start thinking about where lots of ends come together, and we appreciate your leadership with that. Could somebody, Ms. Athens, is Ms. Parkson still online? Do you know? She is. Okay, good. All right. I'm asking her if she has a question or a response to the questions that we're going to take now to let us know, okay? Because sometimes when somebody's online and everybody else is in the same space, you forget about them, and we don't want to do that. So, great presentations, folks. Thank you. One of the things that all of us know, having worked in leadership in some way here in the territory, is that you need to have partners from all over the place, and you need to come into the space with an understanding of what it is you think you want to do, so that your partners can be useful and they don't tell you stupidness, right? I love that word. Anyway, and I think this activity helps us to not make that mistake. Okay, so we're beginning to get an idea of what it is that we really think we want to do. And what I keep hearing, folks, is some understanding of that you really are dealing with multiple small areas of making an input that are in a particular kind of framework. And I'm wondering if the three of you could help the rest of the audience, and I can open it to everyone, to begin to talk about how do you think, what is the best experience you've seen or you can think about that allows those smaller projects to begin to come together? Where is that space? Does that make sense to you? Are you understanding my question? Where do you bring it together? Because if your crosswalks, the housing, public housing issues, how we deal with other things happening in other places, where is the space that brings all that together?
So I'll start, if I may, only because I think about this a lot. I regularly am in small rural communities, for example, on the mainland, and you know, you get out into rural countryside, and one of the first things, very small communities, population of 5,000 or 1,000 or 300 people. I'm doing a lot of that work with the CDC, and they'll say, we don't have any resources, we don't. And one of the lessons we've learned is that the first channel of success is being what I call opportunistic. When work is happening anyway, that's when we have to put this lens on it. And the lens should always begin with equity and inclusion of the voices of the people who will be most impacted, right? Let's let the residents have a voice in this. Let's think in terms of resilience. Let's think in terms of how are we going to stand up with to the kind of weather changes that are coming, climate changes, you know, sort of the worst storms that they're going to see, the highest rainfalls, the flooding. And let's always have a lens toward the active modes being institutionalized, the walking, the bicycling, the transit, because I am on the cusp of the very audience that Mr. Graham just spoke about, that is that day when I shouldn't be driving anymore, right? That's not that far, that's foreseeable in my future. Yet I still want to be a member of my community. I want to be able to walk to the corner store, the coffee shop, to my medical care, to my daily needs. So let's have a lens toward, or as Cheryl said with AARP, they think about age 8 to 80 communities. I don't know if you guys heard her say that. She said, I want to think about the 80-year-old and the 8-year-old. That's what an age-friendly community is. It's across the spectrum of age. Before I'm driving and after I'm not driving anymore, I should still be able to navigate that world. So now I have to dig up a street to do sewer work underneath. That's when I can ask the question, should I also be adding sidewalks? Should I be, could we possibly change the lane widths, bring the vehicle speeds down, and add bicycle lanes? In fact, I'm sure during the recent bicycle design training, you guys talked about those kind of techniques. If we're building a new school, if we're building or rebuilding housing, does that present an opportunity to include walkability, bikeability, inclusive access for all in the work I'm doing anyway? If I'm rebuilding with FEMA funds, right, after coming out of a storm, during my reconstruction, it's happening anyway, is there an opportunity to put the lens of access for all into that work? So the important point there is you're not hearing me say, let's start writing grants for new money. Let's go see where we can find the new resources. Often work is happening, it's already underway, and we should be instituting these principles in that flow, which is why I was so delighted with everything you just said, because it says, as we're doing this housing work, it should just be institutionalized right into that. Equity and inclusion from the start, with a lens toward access for all across the age spectrum, and the car, you'll notice, is not the first mode of access that we think about. We think about our feet first, the pedestrian, the bicyclist, the transit user.
Okay, I think I understand where the space is. Mr. Graham or Ms. Harris, do you have any points you want to make?
Well, the only thing that I would add, I like Mark's word opportunistic. In public health, sometimes we say low-hanging fruit, and I'm trying to start getting away from that saying. What I tell a lot of our small teams is just start. Just start somewhere, and you need to look where that momentum is, and you don't have an idea of where that's at if these interdisciplinary partners are not at the table. Fast forward to where we are now today in the USVI, you've got all these partners at the table. We just heard housing is going to replace 3,000 units. He gave a perfect example on the slide of the senior housing facility, and for me, I always sometimes put things in what I call karma's kindergarten. And that example was the best visual example to me of what CDC is saying when they call it activity-friendly routes to everyday destinations. You take that housing unit and you make sure that if I'm living there, I can go to the drugstore, I can go to retail, I can go see my doctor, maybe my place of worship is close by, maybe schools are close by. And Mr. Graham is already thinking we should be able to get there actively. We shouldn't have to drive. And to me, that is a golden nugget that you already have in place that's coming down. And there's a lot of other momentum with the federal funds that are coming, and it's going to take coalescing around these partnerships to make that happen. The development of the Highway Safety Plan with Ms. Cranston, these are things that you all can tackle together that's already being done in silos. So I would just encourage you to think, like Mark said, opportunistic, look at where that momentum is, and you know, even with the passage of the Complete Streets policy, which you guys, it's amazing. Congratulations on that. The advocacy doesn't stop. It doesn't stop because the policy's passed. You have to keep advocating in order to get the pieces of that implemented. Those concepts can be built into the streets around the housing facility. So think about how to connect all these important dots, and you can't do that unless you work together. So think opportunistically, think about momentum, and think about partnerships.
Okay. I appreciate those comments. That makes sense. I still have a question. Mr. Graham, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to say that again, the work that Dr. McKayle has done in CERC is impactful in the housing authority, and that's about leadership in terms of knowing the research, doing the research, and then knowing how it impacts the community. We're able to take we're the experiment for the research that Dr. McKayle has done. As the Housing Authority chairperson, she's able to direct our actions to be intentional about what we do. And the work in terms of health disparities, in that research, obesity in the territory is outstanding. And that can be dealt with. Part of it, as Karma is saying, do something, and that doing something is starting to walk, to move, to exercise, and we all can do that because at some point in time, we're all going to meet up with some chronic disease. Some chronic disease at some point in your life, and you can begin to delay that by doing something active now, and also, again, for those that you love, getting them active as well.
Thank you. I guess I think I understand all your answers and I agree with them. The part that I still have a question about is in a territory where many of our leaders begin the conversation with themselves or others about what they want to do about the problem based on resources available or a program that has been designed by the feds. And then all of a sudden the train starts and almost nobody can get on it. Okay? So I'm trying to figure out how do you make sure that before that takes off, that you understand the area that Mr. Graham is speaking about, because of the configuration there, Public Works is an important player in dealing with how you deal with those streets. It is very difficult to cross streets in that area. Okay, and if you're an older person, it is even more so. You are crossing at the kindness of someone driving. That is not good traffic policy. Okay, because if they have a bad day, you could have a really bad situation. So how do we get it so that when his building is going up, that's already on, we know that we can take care of this in some way, because either he has the resources or somebody else or Public Works knows where they can get it, and so all of it can come together in one place. That to me is a part of the challenge that we have with respect to pulling all of these things together. I mean, I love his example, and it makes a lot of sense. It absolutely does. I really like the one for Oswald Harris, and I agree. He brings us back, Mr. Graham brought us back to the challenge in the territory where if I take 300 units offline here, where am I going to put these people? The island is 13 by 3. Where do they go? Okay? So we need to figure out how we're going to deal with those kinds of things. But so what do you folks think? Panelists, people in the audience, there are people in here with plenty of experience. Where's the space?
Let me throw one idea out in answer to this, sort of the how do we get on that train, if I may, because I think that's a really important question. And my sense is that we've used these walk audits, and Peter, you guys just used bike audits where you actually people got out and experienced the environment in this mode. They're a pretty powerful planning tool. And that if we could convene interdisciplinary groups, we've had success where Carmen and I have worked in communities where we'll have an elected official, a public works person, somebody from the equivalent of DPNR, right, a planning, the local school, housing authority, maybe a transit authority if there's one, as well as residents, local stakeholders, the people who have the lived experience in that neighborhood, yes, right? And that's really important. The people who live there every day and are trying to get to that corner store, walk a child to school. And when we get out and move through that space together and are not sitting across the table arguing about whether there's enough resource for my sidewalk or your sidewalk, right? That's a confrontational relationship. I find the act, this is going to sound totally touchy-feely, so please, everyone forgive me for this. Walking shoulder to shoulder, we're looking in the same direction, we're experiencing it the same way. right? And it changes the tenor of the conversations. We use this as an intentional planning tool. I've worked in communities where they've institutionalized that, where they've said as a requirement of planning, when a new project is going in, whether it's a roadway project, housing project, transit, a reconstruction, it is required that we do public input. Now, we often say, well, that's a public meeting. If people show up at the meeting, they can look at the drawings and give their feedback. That is not the same as place-based, community-based public input, where we do it in the neighborhood, walk that very street together, again, with the people with lived experience. That can be institutionalized. You could say that's going to be a goal of the Walkability Institute. And indeed, CIRC is the kind of institution that is very much attuned to that, right? They are very much about community engagement. I think it's one of the reasons the Walkability Institute ended up here for the next phase of its evolution, because it will be very much about community engagement, place-based, let the residents' voice be heard through that process.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that response. Senator, good morning. Are you prepared to come and speak, or what do you want to do? Well, please come forward. On your agenda, you would have seen our Senate President's name, Donna Fred Gregory, and I'm happy she's able to be here. Please come forward and have a seat. And my question to everyone has been, why do you think you should be here to talk about this, and what is your information that you'd like to share about your particular part of the territory's work in terms of walkability? Good morning and welcome. Yes, please do that. And there's a mic to your left.
Good morning, everyone. And
morning. It's on. We're
Can
good.
you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. Of course, I just ran off the Senate floor because we have our budget hearings, but we had a little confusion about what's happening here today. But in any event, I'm happy to be here, and absolutely, this conversation is a very important conversation for us to be having in the Virgin Islands. We know that there is a lot of infrastructure development that's going on. I see our housing director here, so good morning to you. So I'm happy that he's here because we have a lot of new structures that will be going up in the next few years. So this is really, the people that are here, is important for them to be here. But let me just say that, and I'm certain that all of us know this that's in the room, but if we don't, that the legislature passed Bill number 34, that's 0087, in this particular Senate that we're in now, and it's now Act 8548, that mandates the creation of complete streets policy for the territory. Now, of course, that requires hard work. It requires, folks to really get together and put that policy together so we can begin to move this forward. And we did not pass, it's not an unfunded mandate. It is, in fact, a mandate where we appropriated some $100,000 for that particular purpose. And of course, as the work goes on and there's additional resources that's needed, we are definitely prepared. I'm prepared as a senator to ensure that we are able to appropriate the necessary funding, because, walkability for the aged, as well as for our disabled people here in the Virgin Islands, and for us, normal people, is important. So it's something that we really need to get done. The only regret that I have is we're having this conversation late. We should have had it before. We should have really been deep down in it. Of course, we've had the storms of 2017, the hurricanes of 2017. So now we are in a perfect opportunity. And of course, I would always say, what better time than now? We're here now.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. We were talking about how you can, where's the space that you can actually bring all of the planning that needs to come together. And I think somebody in the audience was trying to get my attention. Was that you, Dr. McKayle? Maybe we need to give you, would you come forward and take a mic so that the audience?
Yeah, I'm aging myself with that, right? Okay. Good morning. So I was listening, great presentations, and I'm really happy to be here. I live in a place where I cannot walk to work and I cannot take public transportation, and I applaud what we're doing for the seniors, but I agree that we have to think about the entire territory. And I think it needs to start at the top and at the bottom, right? But because, I listen, and crosswalks are good, but we also need the police department, because with no enforcement, I'm going to get killed, and I'm not stepping on that crosswalk, right? So it needs to, I think it needs to start at the very, very top with all the commissioners, and then it needs to filter through to every single place in the agencies that it's important, or else people will continue to do their jobs because it works for whatever they're doing their jobs for. It doesn't need to work for something else like walkability. So yes, we can deal with the runoff and we can deal with that, but if we're not also thinking walkability, then it might be counter, right? So I think it needs to start at the top, and it needs to be something, and this is where CERC comes in. If it becomes a public health issue, if it becomes a public safety issue, it becomes all of that, and it becomes a priority, then I think we'll see a difference. Because everyone is here because everyone cares, but some of the people that aren't thinking this way aren't in this room right now. And so that's why I'm sitting here thinking, yay, this is great, and then I know I'm going to walk out and feel like, well, that was a great 2 days. What next? Yes. So I think it needs to start at the very top and filter through to every corner of every agency.
Absolutely. Please, go ahead.
I'm happy to hear your concern, Dr. McKayle. And as I sat here, I thought about a conversation that we had just yesterday on the Senate floor with the Department of Planning and Natural Resources. Is there anyone here from DPNR? DPNR has to be in this conversation. We are having conversation. There is a contract that has been signed by this government for, I believe, some $1.8 million for a land and water use plan. Okay. So if we are going to have the conversation around walkability in the territory, then whomever was assigned that contract, whoever was awarded that contract, must know that this is some of the work that we're doing, and we need to engage in that manner. So I'm happy that you said that. So I'm not certain who's in charge here.
They will be here for tomorrow.
Okay, they'll be here. Okay, awesome.
They're on another panel, but
okay, perfect.
You're right. It would have been nice to have someone here as well today.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you. One of the things that we're ready to break for lunch, but before we go, something we didn't talk about that is difficult to include in some ways, and it's one of the things that CERC has tried to deal with to some extent. When I watch a grandmother, and it's clear to me that this is a grandmother, taking her grandchildren across the street, and the person steps out into the road, what I hear is, and she looks, there's kind of cars everywhere, and she says, y'all gonna stop. Okay? That's what I hear. What I hear is, you're supposed to understand that there should be respect for my age, for me as a person, for these children. There are cultural messages that we give all the time in the way we move that conflict with the way we have planned and set up spaces. Okay? So the question is, will the communications strategy and plan that we put together include that in a way that it doesn't make the person feel badly about that, but actually helps them to change their behavior in some kind of way? And I think that's one of the things we have to put on the list someplace, because we leave it off all the time, and then we say these people just don't get it. Well, it's part of what we have to deal with, okay? And I think you should respect people coming across, but if I'm late for a meeting, that part of my brain might not be working with this other part, and we could have a problem in that space, okay? So I think we need to include all of that, and I'm so happy that we've planned this space to do that. I want to thank all our panelists this morning. Thank you so much for coming. I know budget days we have been honored. Thank you. We appreciate that. All our panelists from this morning, all of you that are online listening, I hope that we can have your input in detail when we go through with the strategic priorities. And Mr. Fenton is going to set up the stage for he's going to tell you what we're going to do. He needs 2 more minutes of your time, and then we'll break for lunch and come back at 1 with the first set of working groups.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to summarize very quickly that we'll have 2 Zoom sessions available, and hopefully those of you watching online virtually have already received, and I know you have received emails with Zoom links, but just to remind you that the challenge that's been put forward now is not without substance. This should be the beginning of a process of a very concrete action plan to move forward on the very priorities that have been identified here. The goal would be this afternoon from 1 to 5 p.m. There are a series of sessions available on 5 topics, and we just really built them off of the very expertise that had brought us to this day. As you can see in the slide here, pressing health challenges, development pressures. We were thinking very much indeed about the DPNR land and water plan, social justice and equity, resilience concerns, and the notion that I keep going back to, and I know I'm a broken record, this idea of community engagement, really inclusive community engagement, and using demonstration projects to build momentum, because they are part of the way you begin the cultural shift. I would like to imagine that the culture of pedestrian behavior in front of Sunny Isle Shopping Center has somewhat changed because of the demonstration project that was put there. It's not perfect, but we're moving, right, by virtue of. So this afternoon, the goal will be to think strategically. What are strategic goals? It's not the nitty-gritty, where are we going to paint a crosswalk? What are we going to do with that particular housing project? Handful of strategic goals. So there are breakout sessions that we're hoping you'll join those and offer your best thoughts on big strategic priorities. Tomorrow morning, we then use those strategic priorities that the community has developed to inform actual action planning recommendations. So tomorrow morning's breakout sessions, and again, you see 5 topics here, and you see, let's think more about education and youth engagement. You and I spoke about this earlier. The Complete Streets policy, you've passed it. What does implementation really look like at the practical level? Just exactly as you spoke about. The land and water plan, again, prescient, because we've heard from enough people that that should be one of the focal areas. Other principles of healthy community design, the very things, Mr. Graham, that you spoke about, those are principles of healthy design, connecting residents to their daily needs, and resilience and sustainability. It must be a thread through all of this. So these are the guiding topics for much more specific action planning. Therefore, we really implore you, please rejoin those Zoom meetings, be a part of those conversations. In fact, some of the folks you've met already will be helping to facilitate those conversations. The goal, get to some of the beef of the real specifics of doing just what you challenged us to do, Dr. Ragster.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you all for taking the time this morning to participate in this USVI Walkability Institute Summit, and ask you to please come back this afternoon after you've had a nice healthy lunch and you walked around for a few minutes, and go for your walk. Go for your walk. Yes, yes, absolutely. And we'll see you in the afternoon. Thank you, everyone.
Larissa Elliott. On June 2nd, Governor Bryan Jr. met with officials from the Department of Health and representatives from Flat Architects as a part of the department's stakeholder outreach discussions for the first look at the design of the new Charles Harwood Medical Complex in Christiansted. The presentation, led by Flat Principal Steve Jackson, reviewed the project's cost and timeline. Also included in the discussion was a review of previous visioning sessions conducted by the department. Here is what participants had to say.
We would like individuals walking into that building to be able to feel better. We want to create an environment which we are caring for not just you, but also for your family members. We want to be able to care for you and prevent illness from occurring so that you're not hospitalized in the future.
I think the greatest impact for the community for this project is more than the building. It's what it represents to the community, that the Department of Health is there. They're progressive, they're innovative in their technologies and their ability to serve patient care and their dedication to them.
This new facility should stand for excellence. This facility can best serve and engage the community by compelling, by its presence, its state-of-the-art, by its efficiency, compel persons to want to come to receive the services that are being provided out of the complex.
We definitely want, when persons are seeking advancements in healthcare, that the least of their problems is the structure, the amenities in the structure, the services offered. My vision is to have all of those things from inception to conclusion be as seamless as possible.
Demolition of the current facility will commence this year, and construction on the new clinic is expected to begin in 2023. In great news for public housing residents in the town of Frederiksted, the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority is working to complete a $2.6 million recovery project to repair residential units in the Lagoon complex. Jason Brown, construction manager for the authority, is on site with more information.
Construction began here at Fritz Lawat on April 9th of 2021 with a completion date of August of 2024. Celestine Construction is contracted to complete this task, demoing of existing concrete decks, the removal of the curtain wall windows that exist at this time. At this point, 16 decks have been completely demoed and reconstructed, along with new Miami windows, as well as new foam panel wall that was inserted to harden the structure. The funding source for this project came from FEMA and insurance proceeds. After completion of this project, the residents will have a fortified hurricane-proof home to live in.
Thank you for that update, Jason. Over on St. Thomas, mutual connections, share information, lobby for reform, and support each other's initiatives. In more good news for Frederiksted, the Virgin Islands Housing Authority is continuing its mission to reinvent public housing in the territory. The authority recently held a panel discussion hosted by contractor Urban Land Institute, which included interviews with 75 local stakeholders on their vision for Freedom City. The week-long schedule took ULI staff and other stakeholders on a tour of the town area and to various meetings, which ended with a presentation on preliminary findings and next steps at the Delta Door Center. VIHA Executive Director Robert Graham gave opening remarks at the session.
So the purpose of our service panel is to take all the ideas, distill them, and to be able to then deal with how is the Housing Authority dealing with its redevelopment plan, replacing all of our old public housing. How are we investing in our people in those new developments, and how we are working to ensure that the developments that we are building are energy efficient.
Business owners, contractors, and consultants interested in doing business with the recovery should visit the ODR website for an updated list of open bid announcements and detailed information. Recently, the Department of Health closed an RFP for the abatement and demolition of the Charles Howard facility, and the Virgin Islands Housing Authority closed its solicitation for the revitalization of the D. Hamilton Jackson Terrace and Alfonso Piggy Gerard complex. For more information on other bid announcements, as well as up-to-date news on all disaster recovery projects in the territory, log On June 2nd, Governor Albert Bryan Jr. met with officials from the Department of Health and representatives from Flat Architects as a part of the department's stakeholder outreach discussions for the first look at the design of the new Charles Harwood Medical Complex in Christiansted. The presentation, led by Flat Principal Steve Jackson, reviewed the project's cost and timeline. Also included in the discussion was a review of previous visioning sessions conducted by the department. Here is what participants had to say.
We would like individuals walking into that building to be able to feel better. We want to create an environment which we are caring for not just you, but also for your family members. We want to be able to care for you and prevent illness from occurring so that you're not hospitalized in the future.
I think the greatest impact for the community for this project is more than the building. It's what it represents to the community, that the Department of Health is there. They're progressive, they're innovative in their technologies and their ability to serve patient care and their dedication to them.
This new facility should stand for excellence. This facility can best serve and engage the community by compelling, by its presence, its state-of-the-art, by its efficiency, compel persons to want to come to receive the services that are being provided out of the complex.
We definitely want, when persons are seeking advancements in healthcare, that the least of their problems is the structure, the amenities in the structure, the services offered. My vision is to have all of those things from inception to conclusion be as seamless as possible.
Demolition of the current facility will commence this year, and construction on the new clinic is expected to begin in 2023. In great news for public housing residents in the town of Frederiksted, the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority is working to complete a $2.6 million recovery project to repair residential units in the Lagoon complex. Jason Brown, construction manager for the authority, is on site with more information.
Construction began here at Fritz Lawat on April 9th of 2021 with a completion date of August of 2024. Celestine Construction is contracted to complete this task, demoing of existing concrete decks, the removal of the curtain wall windows that exist at this time. At this point, 16 decks have been completely demoed and reconstructed, along with new Miami windows, as well as new foam panel wall that was inserted to harden the structure. The funding source for this project came from FEMA and insurance proceeds. After completion of this project, the residents will have a fortified hurricane-proof home to live in.
Thank you for that update, Jason. Over on St. Thomas, mutual connections, share information, lobby for reform, and support each other's initiatives. In more good news for Frederiksted, the Virgin Islands Housing Authority is continuing its mission to reinvent public housing in the territory. The authority recently held a panel discussion hosted by contractor Urban Land Institute, which included interviews with 75 local stakeholders on their vision for Freedom City. The week-long schedule took ULI staff and other stakeholders on a tour of the town area and to various meetings, which ended with a presentation on preliminary findings and next steps at the Delta Door Center. VIHA Executive Director Robert Graham gave opening remarks at the session.
So the purpose of our service panel is to take all the ideas, distill them, and to be able to then deal with how is the Housing Authority dealing with its redevelopment plan, replacing all of our old public housing. How are we investing in our people in those new developments, and how we are working to ensure that the developments that we are building are energy efficient.
Business owners, contractors, and consultants interested in doing business with the recovery should visit the ODR website for an updated list of open bid announcements and detailed information. Recently, the Department of Health closed an RFP for the abatement and demolition of the Charles Howard facility, and the Virgin Islands Housing Authority closed its solicitation for the revitalization of the D. Hamilton Jackson Terrace and Alfonso Piggy Gerard complex. For more information on other bid announcements, as well as up-to-date news on all disaster recovery projects in the territory,